The story begins when we are introduced to Gansu province and the Mima Alliance, where intrigue and life are in full swing. The table can barely support the weight of the many delicacies, the variety of which is amazing. Even the chair under the chairman of the alliance on which he sits trembles from his weight. The chairman of the Mima Alliance, Hugong, is known for his obesity and his great appetite. Picking up his chopsticks and spoon, he carefully examines the dishes, deciding where to start. But as soon as he brings the chopsticks to the sliced meat, he is distracted by an unexpected voice. He turns his head and sees Jehal Hai, but she replies that she is busy and not interested in her urgent report. Hugong brushes her off and continues eating, but Jehal Hai is not about to give up and approaches him. She greeted him, introducing herself as a strategist for the Mima Alliance, and reminded him of the important news. Out of politeness, Hugong offered to sit down and eat with her, but she refused, saying she didn't want to gain weight. A lover of good food, Hugong began to explain that she needed to eat more to look more appetizing. He considered himself irresistibly charming. Seeing him enjoying his charm, Jehal Hai just laughed. Her laughter was a welcome reaction for him, even though she came with important news. She had two pieces of news, one good and one bad. The chairman decided to start with the good news. The first news she told was that the king of the Green Forest had managed to raise a herd of cows whose beef quality was second to none on the mountain of the Royal Bull. But it was too early to rejoice, as she told him, piquing his interest in the second piece of news. She went on to tell him that the Hyeonam branch of the Alliance had reported that the Holy Swordsman had set out on a journey, and judging by his departure time and route, he should arrive in their city by noon tomorrow. The Holy Swordsman used to be considered the best fencing master in the country, but 10 years ago he disappeared, and people thought he would never return to Jianggu. However, unexpectedly, he challenged the head of the Mima Alliance to a duel. After that, the girl had a question for the chairman. What would he do next? After Hugong stuffed his mouth with meat and pasta, his stomach was completely full of food. He looked up at the girl and told her that, of course, to run away. But this answer did not comfort her, and she thought he was joking, because he explained that it was better to give up his position than to be cut to pieces by the Holy Swordsman. Hugong was sure that the Holy Swordsman had enough wisdom and nobility to become the head of the alliance. The girl asked him why he shouldn't accept the challenge from the head of the alliance, and wanted to see his martial arts, as she had only seen him at the table since childhood. She also admired him, knowing that he had sent such criminals as the Blood Priest of the Demon Cult, the Ghost Emperor of Ghost Gorge, and the Tibetan Demon King of the Killer Demons to Hell. But he explained to her that he was very lucky at the time, and admitted that he had killed them by accident. After that, he asked her to just look at him, because lately he has been out of breath even from a short walk. He decided that he needed to get out of the city before midnight and told the girl that he was leaving the running of the alliance to her. He planned to become a farmer on the Royal Bull Mountain, where the king of the Green Forest lives, or go to the North Sea, where the North Fairy of Mystical Yin invited him to taste especially delicious fish during the fishing season. The girl replied that wherever he went, she would follow him in 6 months. He only asked to be left alone and did not understand why this happened to him. She didn't care and asked if he really didn't want to fight, but then she saw something that really surprised her. She didn't know what was happening. His body began to turn red, absorbing power in the form of chakra that surrounded him. He had a vision. 3 people were in the forest. One of them was the warrior Mu Yeon, and the other 2 could not understand what was happening to him because he was limping. Then he saw the Holy Swordsman slaughtering everyone, not even the townspeople. Everyone in Hyeonam was dead, and the Shaolin and Wudang monks tried to stop him, but it is not known if they succeeded. He noticed that the killer was nearby. The Holy Swordsman was known for his nobility and honor. If he did such a thing, it was for one reason only, because of the corruption of his energy. This is an anomaly that leads to demonic possession. The chairman decided that he had to find out where the Holy Swordsman was now. His energy became extremely high. He was practicing, and the others could only wait for his instructions. The girl could not understand what he had just done, because the table and everything around them flew in different directions. He told her that the Holy Swordsman had suffered a power corruption and was now possessed. Hugong could not understand how this happened, how the Holy Swordsman could fall so low. He told the girl that he had to find him as soon as possible. She shouted after him, "Wait!" But she only saw a red flash in front of her. The flash was followed by a jet of energy that reached straight into the sky. At the end of this jet was Hugong, who jumped so high that you couldn't even see him. No one could awaken the Holy Swordsman. Everyone wondered why such a respected warrior would commit such atrocities. His nobility was the greatest in the world, and now he acts like this. His feet began to pace, and he said that this man was telling the truth. He considered himself to be someone who had always been meek and kind, and he told everyone that he had remained so. At the same time, this miserable fat man Hugong did not deny himself anything, but he was still considered the strongest warrior. He looked down on everyone. The swordsman was sure that the chairman was secretly happy when he was sent into exile. He recalled how the head called him unworthy to be even a servant, and this amused him. Saint Swordsman had a great grudge against the head. He blamed himself for the fact that his talents, strength, muscles, everything that is in the head, saying that it is not in him. He continued to say that he was the holy swordsman, and would teach this pig meekness or make him kneel before him. Then he told everyone around him that he was now the strongest warrior and the strongest swordsman, and that everyone would bow down before him and honor him. He wanted to make everyone respect his patience and meekness, which he had gained in his quest to surpass this, as he called it, bore. The old man who was there told him that he was a little out of it now. He understood how he could drown in his pride and madness. But the man came up, hit him on the neck, and asked him to shut up, calling him an old fool. Although the old man did not consider his words to be madness, he held his neck and squeezed it. After that, he almost strangled the old man, so that his mouth was bleeding. It seemed that no one could stop the holy swordsman now. He picked up his sword and said that no one could escape the death that his sword would bring. The destructive power that poured from him was blinding and extremely powerful. His body was surrounded by a force incomprehensible to an ordinary person. Suddenly, a radiance, directly above his head, only slightly different in color, began to illuminate him. This was not according to his plan. He realized that something incomprehensible was happening. Looking in front of him, he could not understand what was happening. Then, when blood began to flow from his body, he noticed a very fat body in front of him. He was sitting on his knees, and his arms were already separated from his body, and he recognized this man. It was Hugong. It was at that moment that he realized that no matter how much he chased him, he was still not getting anywhere. He looked at his hands, which were lying near the sword, and wondered if it was all in vain. In the visions of the holy swordsman, the head had lost everything. He was so weak that he was almost blown away by the wind, but he did not listen for long, and asked the swordsman to close his mouth, and then snapped his fingers. This snap of his fingers put an end to the swordsman and left a fat dot on him. He fell to the ground and fell apart. There was not a single living thing left of him. Only the head of the Alliance stood and looked at the trail left on the floor. Then he closed his eyes, feeling as if he had fallen somewhere in his head. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't tell if he was dreaming. He was looking at the second floor of the bed, which was directly in front of him, as he was lying on the first floor. He did not understand what had happened or where he was. It was not his bedroom. He started to get out of bed, putting his foot on the floor. He started looking around the room, not understanding what was happening. He felt terrible. He was coughing, and did not understand what had been done to him, because after taking a few steps, he was completely exhausted. Then he saw a mirror in front of him. He approached the mirror and held it with his hands, and could not believe what he was seeing. He could not understand when he became like this, and how he could have become younger, because even when he was young, he did not look like this. He did not recognize his body. At that moment, he could not understand whether he had merged with someone else, because there was no soul in this body. Then he realized that there was a soul exchange, when souls change places with someone else. But why did he get a body at his last breath? His energy and physical condition was simply terrible. At that moment, he remembered the words of the swordsman, who said that he could keep his strength for a long time. But his words were cut short, because after that he killed him. He could not understand whether everything had happened as Mechnik had said, and whether it was not a dying delirium. After that, he couldn't understand who had put his soul in someone else's body and why they did it, and if his soul is now in this body, what happened to his old body as the head of the Alliance? Was it the owner of this new body who moved into that body? He looked down and saw his arms, which had no strength at all. They were wrapped in bandages right along the tendons. Removing the bandages, he saw many cuts from a knife or blade on the tendons. Removing the bandage from his neck, he noticed that there were many wounds there as well. As he got closer to the mirror, he could not understand who this loser was that he had possessed. Who could dispose of his body and soul, since he didn't even have any enemies? He asked himself this question with every step he took around the room. Looking around, he noticed that the room looked quite nice, which suggested that the family did not live in poverty. He hoped that his own body was fine, but he could not understand what had happened to the young man's body. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door behind him. He didn't know what to do, thinking quickly whether to pretend to be asleep or leave it at that. A gray-haired old man came into the room and was happy to see that his child, as he called him, was awake. From the way he addressed him, one could conclude that the old man probably had no idea what had happened. When he looked at the old man a little closer, he noticed that he was the chief librarian of the Great Heavenly Library, Baum Shan. The Great Library of Heaven is a library that has been run by families of scholars for generations. It is one of the 3 great libraries in the Central Plains. The Baum family scholars know everything about ancient texts and artifacts. Baum Chan himself is a scholar of such a caliber that today's experts pale in comparison. The old owner of this body met him 4 or 5 years ago. He looked the same as he did when he last met him, which means that it is about the same time that he left his body. Baum told the guy that he had decided to fulfill what he had been waiting for so long and asked him to come closer. He didn't know what was happening, but he realized that the old man was clearly mistaking him for his grandson. He came closer and sat down on the bed next to him. The grandfather took out a red handkerchief with a small red ball in it. He looked at this ball and thought, "Is this medicine?" Since he was very weak, he thought it was medicine to heal him, but it turned out to be quite different. I was suspicious because my grandfather looked very sad and spoke of a wish. He could tell by the grandfather's eyes and the young man's scratched body, which were clearly the result of a suicide attempt. He realized that his grandfather had brought him only one thing: poison. There was a few minutes of silence between them, and they looked into each other's eyes. It seemed that something had to be done, and the first thing he thought in this situation was that a grandson should not talk to his grandfather like that. Then he decided to ask his grandfather if he was giving him poison. He just held out a pill and asked him to eat it. He did not even deny that it was poison. But before he ate it, he asked him to ask him a question. He asked who the head of the Marima Alliance was, but the old man did not understand why he was interested. Since the boy had to know the circumstances of the exchange of souls and in what time he was incarnated, he told his grandfather that it was very important. But in response, he heard, "Shut up, puppy!" The grandfather became very angry and began to say that his grandson was trying to commit suicide and begged him to kill him again and again. And now he asks questions about the head of the alliance, Murim. It was hard to understand why the grandfather was so angry, so he decided to calm him down somehow. He explained that he didn't want to die and asked him to leave him, saying that the morning is wiser than the evening, and offered to talk in the morning. He did not understand what was going on, but he would have to find out as he went along. After the old man shook while sitting on the bed, he rushed at the guy with his hands to grab him. He would not allow any grandfather to treat him like that, and decided to try to calm him down with a gust of wind from his fingers. But it didn't work. When he pointed his fingers toward his grandfather, middle and index, nothing happened. This made him realize that he had to run away. He turned in the other direction and started running. Damn it. Now he was slower than a duck and could not escape from his grandfather at all. Grandpa caught up with him and threw him face first on the floor. The boy begged him to get off him, but his grandfather just opened his mouth and threw a pill inside. The pill immediately began to dissolve. He had to spit it out as soon as possible. If this was his real body, he would have taken the pill for pleasure. But in this body, he had no strength and nothing. He was barely able to turn toward his grandfather and swing his arm at him to hit him squarely in the neck and somehow stop him. Crawling on his knees on the floor, he managed to spit out the pill, but it was already in a more liquid state. Looking at the pill, the picture in his eyes swam. He realized he was poisoned and fell face first to the floor. At that moment, he could not believe that he would die like that. His grandfather stood over him and told him about the words he had once said, that he did not care about pain, and that he always wanted to die. In his mind, the boy said to his grandfather, "I am not your grandson. I am the head of the Murim Alliance." Although the grandfather helped him fulfill his wish, it was still hard for him to watch him suffer, because he was his grandson. This situation was a complete disaster for him. To die like this, and in someone else's body. So many normal people around him, and he moved into a boy with a head injury and could not believe that he would die without even knowing who moved him into this body. To die like that, such a miserable death, was not for him. He found the strength to open his eye and realized that he should not die in such stupid circumstances. He couldn't save himself, but he had one last resort. Lying on the floor, he shouted the word, "Grandfather." This made his grandfather turn his head toward him. In fact, he didn't want to do it at all. But he realized that there was no other way, and he reached out to his grandfather. He begged him, asking him that he did not want to die, that he could get some help from him. He was crawling closer and closer, his face falling to the floor because he had no strength, and the pill was already starting to work. Grandpa looked at him and could not understand what was happening to him. He saw his strength and life leaving him completely, and he started shouting for a doctor. "A doctor! Get a doctor!" The grandfather saw the boy's exhausted face with his eyes closed. Meanwhile, in the body of the head of the Alliance, he woke up and looked around with a very shocked expression. First he looked to the right, then to the left. He saw a weapon hanging on the wall in front of him. Standing up, he made sure that no one was in the room. He started to walk toward the weapons and looked in the mirror that stood under the swords on the table. He said to himself, "Seonghwa will not come. Or rather, he will not be able to come." And with a very cunning smile, he took up his sword. He exposed the blade of the sword and began to pull it out of the scabbard. Realizing that he had succeeded in changing souls and that this was not a dream, he brought the blade to his head. It was a real pleasure for him, because he was finally able to do what he had wanted to do for so long. It caused great anxiety in the Alliance when the girl heard about it. She could not believe that her uncle was gone. The poison of the blood toadstool is very strong. If even a small dose gets into the brain, it can lead to mental damage, and there are cases of memory loss and increased aggressiveness as a result of toadstool poisoning. Mr. Bohm heard all this from the doctor who helped the man. It seemed that the old man's heart opened up to his grandson, when this grandson, who had been trying to die all along, suddenly asked for help. Sometime later, when daylight came, the brothers went to his room. One of them asked the other not to drink as much wine as he had and asked about his condition, while the other only asked him to shut up. One of them did not want to believe that his brother had survived to the last, and the other tried to believe because he asked the old man to spare him. But this irritated the second one, and he told the younger one that he was the only older brother, and the one who was lying in bed now was no one at all. After this conversation, they turned around and began to leave the ward, not understanding why they had come at all. The older one thought he was just upset. After a while, the grandfather came into the room, sat down next to his grandson, and sat for a long time, just looking at him. The doctor also came in from time to time to check on him. That day passed. He stayed in bed all day, not even getting up. He did not understand if anyone else would come to visit this guy. The eldest heir had barely survived the poisoning, and only 3 people had visited him. But he realized something. The owner of this body's name is Bom Han, the senior heir of the great heavenly library. He was obsessed with the desire to kill himself. He has brothers, one of whom is a drunkard. His parents are most likely long dead, otherwise they would have come to visit their sick son. Perhaps the death of his parents was the cause of his grief and madness. He realized that the whole family was suffering because of Bom Khan, who was afflicted with such a mental illness. This was not a surprise, but what was even worse was that his attempts to commit suicide caused even more pain. The head of the family tried to kill his own grandson, but no one in the house came to hear the screams and noise. Judging by those he saw today, the mental illness affected all members of his family. He had questions about what kind of decline was going on in the great heavenly library family, but he knew that it was none of his business. First and foremost, he believed that he had to find out how his soul had gotten into this body. He would like to investigate right now, but as the holy swordsman had said, he had lost everything, even his power. First, he needs to put Bom Han's body back in order so that he can move freely. Only then can he start looking for the clue, and then he will be able to find out what happened to his own body. And an even more interesting question is, who is behind all this? But first, it would be nice to eat. It looks like his soul is taking over his physical condition. He hasn't eaten anything yet, and his stomach is already stuck to his spine. At that moment, a girl appears in front of him, leaning right over and looking him in the eye. When he opened his eyes, she jumped away and apologized, saying that he had a speck of dust on his chin, and she was trying to clean it up. He didn't understand why she was so close to him and asked her if she had bad eyesight. In his past life, he could easily feel someone approaching him, because he could even hear the movement of insects at a distance of 50 meters and could even distinguish how many legs each insect had. After that, he asked her name. She could not believe that the poison had damaged his head so badly that he could not remember anything. She introduced herself as Seonghwa and said that this was her body. He noticed that she was very well built and her eyes were perky. She didn't look like an ordinary maid. It felt like she was trained in martial arts. He asked her to make him some porridge because he wanted to eat and talk to her about his life. In response, he heard, "Why are you doing this? Why do you want to eat? Do you want to get your strength back? What do you plan to do when you get your strength back?" She thought he was trying to regain his strength so that he could attempt suicide again. She asked him to understand something about the head librarian and about the other young masters. She explained that they were suffering so much emotionally because of him that each of them was ready to commit suicide with him. She asked him not to try to commit suicide anymore, and to experience the joy of life, never to go back. She asked him to live, to be happy, Because laughter, fun, and anticipation of something new is what makes life worth living. He agreed, and said that he would like to start by having a good, hearty meal. But she didn't believe him, and asked him not to lie. He said, "Well, you'll have to die of hunger." But she immediately panicked and shouted that he shouldn't die. It turns out that whether he wants to eat or not, she is still worried. Athletically built, and yet really a maid, she turned out to be incredibly strong physically. Her assignment was to stop Bomhan whenever he tried to commit suicide again. This means that she has already witnessed his attempts many times, and it's no wonder she's a little out of it. But instead of asking her new questions, he decides to ask her what really matters to him. "Who is the current chairman of the Murim Alliance?" he asked. But she didn't understand why he was interested in this and why he was asking. He explained that he liked to listen to her talk and look at her beautiful lips. The fact that he called her lips beautiful made her blush and was delighted. This technique worked, and she agreed to talk. She said that the head of the alliance, Murim, is a fat hog, a huge fat pig. She also said that they say he has such a fat face that his eyes don't open, and when he walks, the whole estate shakes. Nevertheless, she thought he had the nerve to tell everyone that he was the strongest warrior in the world. She also told him about the stupid rumor that he had killed the holy swordsman. She continued to express her opinion about him until he stopped her. He was already pale, and hearing all this about himself made him even paler. She didn't understand what was wrong with his face, and asked him why he was so pale, to which he replied that he was always like that. He wondered how she could say such things about a person based only on his appearance and not on his soul. She even showed him how fat he was with her hands, and said that he was just a joke. He told her that he thought the head of the alliance was a truly great man. Then he raised his voice and shouted, "A great man! I tell you, he is a great man." He began to explain to her that Alliance Chairman Murim is an amazing man. The peace and prosperity of Zhanggu rests on his mighty shoulders, and the scale of this personality she cannot even imagine. He also added that fullness makes a person even more charming, and said that the Alliance Chairman is an example to him. She didn't realize how important this was to him, and just agreed with him, not giving it much thought. She turned around and started running, saying she would bring him something to eat. At least he learned from her words that he had not moved in time. This means that they had simply exchanged souls, and Bomhan was now in his body. He guessed what Bomhan was doing now, but he didn't want to believe it and hoped it wasn't true. Meanwhile, 10 days had passed, and for the first time in a long time, Bomhan was able to stand without assistance. He took all the prescribed medications, and, although he ate only porridge, he ate 2 or more cups a day. Soon, pain and weakness throughout his body stopped bothering him. Everyone wondered how he had changed, but the doctor told the owner that there was no reason to worry. He was eating well and taking his medications as scheduled. The librarian was afraid to hope too much that these changes were only temporary and that he would be back to his old self. However, he hoped that the doctor was telling the truth, because life is very unpredictable. No one could have predicted that the head of the alliance would commit suicide. The doctor agreed with the host, noting that it was very unexpected that he had killed himself rather than fallen to his death in a heroic battle. Hearing this, the young master began to gnash his teeth, because he could not even imagine that Bom Khan would commit suicide immediately after the exchange of souls. The librarian and the doctor looked at him and thought he was having a nightmare. Now everything fell into place. His soul was exchanged with Bom Khan. The doctor took his hand and stroked it, saying that everything was fine, that it was just a dream, and that he was not in danger. This exchange of souls was done by Bom Khan himself. In any case, he was ready to kill him. His anger was so strong that he stood up on the bed and started screaming, "I'm going to kill you, you damned lunatic! How dare you just die!" He could not understand what kind of person this Bom Khan was. Couldn't he have asked him right away? He shouted that he would beat him, even if he died. After that, he fell on the pillow and foam began to flow from his mouth. The librarian could not believe what he heard, because the guy said that he would not die, but that he would kill someone. He could not believe that his grandson, who had survived to this moment only because they had pulled him back from the dead more than once, had said such a thing. He wanted to die. He had no other desires. The doctor confirmed these words, because he also heard that he definitely said that he wanted to kill someone else. He wants to kill someone else. The thought brought tears of joy to their eyes. The librarian thought these were the most beautiful words he had ever heard in his life. He lay on the bed, exhaling heavily, and Seonghwa held him close, trying to give him strength. His mind was racing with one thought. He would never be able to return to his old body again. However, he couldn't just give up. So he asked the girl for a favor. He unexpectedly asked her to go to physical education, which shocked her. Xianghua could not believe her ears, because these words were simply unthinkable to her. They were being watched by a group of people sent by the librarian. They were sitting on tree branches and watching what was happening in the room. They passed this information on to the librarian, who could not believe it and kept asking, "What are you saying?" They told him that the young master had been practicing physical education for 2 days. At first, his hands were shaking and he was constantly falling, but now he could do 7 push-ups and continued his training every day. The owner did not understand anything. Even the security guard could not believe it, and did not report it right away, thinking that he would soon quit training. But he didn't give up. He did squats and even started doing a horseman's stance. Stretching also became his daily practice, which impressed the guards even more. The librarian was stunned, as he knew the boy's physical condition better than anyone else. He had barely moved before. The guard also said that the boy had started asking for more food and was now eating larger portions and drinking more water. This information shocked the chapter, as the boy not only did not give up, but also became stronger. But for them, it was similar to the case last year, when Bo Mahan also demonstrated positive changes in his life. His mood improved, he began to eat normally, and even walked around smiling at those he met. He seemed to have started a new life, and everyone was happy for him. However, as soon as he was convinced that the surveillance was relaxed, he immediately tried to hang himself. Luckily, he was caught before he could suffocate and saved. Everyone who was there recalled with horror his crazy, chilling laughter, and the absent look in his bloodshot eyes. The guard believed that this time he was behaving much more cunningly than the last time, and was sure that he was training to be able to kill himself instantly. So he asked his master not to let him get stronger. But the owner really wanted to believe him. Whatever the boy's motives were, he could not know. But he remembered his words about how he asked to be spared after he swallowed a poison pill. He also remembered the time when his whole body was shaking with tension and rage, and he was shouting that he was going to kill someone. My grandfather realized that he shouldn't hinder his recovery just because he was afraid for him. He asked that his grandson be brought to him. After a while, his grandson was already standing in his room. The boy said that his memory was the same as before, and he did not remember anything. Then he asked his grandfather what had happened. The grandfather saw the boy start stretching right in front of him, saying that he shouldn't waste a minute or a second. He was amazed. Could he really spread his legs so wide? Although it was not a full stretch, he spread his legs a little wider than shoulder width apart. You could see how hard he was trying and doing his best to get a little better. When his grandfather asked him about his plans, he explained that he would work out, study his body, and gradually become stronger. He told his grandfather that there was still a lot he didn't know, and a lot he needed to do. His grandfather noticed that his desire was always limited to the desire to kill himself. His grandfather saw him doing push-ups from the floor, telling him that people didn't think the best of him. The boy did 1 push-up after another, and now he could do as many as 7 push-ups. He was even able to do jumping jacks from a crouch. His grandfather never thought he would be able to jump so high, but wondered why he was showing him when he could have been doing physical education in his room. It seemed to him that it was important to show the boy that he had changed. And as soon as this thought flashed through his grandfather's mind, the boy said he had something to tell him. Grandpa was already listening eagerly, and the words that he did not expect to hear were heard. "Because Mahan is dead." The boy repeated the same words, emphasizing that he was as dead as could be. He told his grandfather that he no longer needed to take care of him or worry about him. My grandfather looked at him and did not understand who was standing in front of him. The boy said, "I am the strongest man in the world." A smile appeared on his face, and you could see at least some life in his eyes. "Is my grandson back?" The grandfather could not believe it. They poured him the last cup, thinking he would not drink anymore. But he said he had to drink the whole bottle. The third heir to the great heavenly library, Bom Bumon, did not leave a drop. He was sitting at a table with the second heir to the great library, Bom Yun, who loved to drink more alcohol, and felt that his brother's attempts to stop him only interfered with his enjoyment of the taste of the wine. Bumon asked his brother to explain something to him. He asked him where he went every morning. Yun replied that he was wasting his time and explained that he should not think that their relative had lost consciousness and memory. He was not doing physical therapy to recover. Yun began to recall the times when their brother tried to deceive them and commit suicide together. Booman tried to believe that his brother had changed and would not let anyone down this time. Yun asked Booman to listen and said that their brother had long ago turned into a demon and would never change, even if the sky broke apart. He reminded them of how they almost lost their grandfather, and he believed that peace would only come when he finally died. Yoon stood up from the table, tapped Boomon on the shoulder and asked him not to be upset because it had become very gloomy, suggesting that they go have a drink elsewhere. Boomon took him by the sleeve and asked him not to be angry with his older brother and not to say bad words behind his back, suggesting that they just go to him and talk. This only made Yun angry. He could not hear his brother say that he had become different and felt happy in his presence. Yun became angry and started throwing dishes against the walls, breaking everything and yelling at Boomon to shut up and never say such words again. The words that Boomon was feeling happy made Yun grab the edge of the table and pull. The table flew to the side, smashing everything in its path. Yun wouldn't even let Boomon call him Big Brother, threatening to kill him if he said it again. Everyone in the establishment was watching this scene and didn't know what to do. This made them stand up and pay attention to what was happening. A man came up to Yun and took him by the shoulder. Yun turned and asked what happened, looking down at the man because he was very big. The man asked them to drink in silence, and you could tell from his face that he was not very friendly about it. After that, he shouted that they were making too much noise and tried to punch Yun with his hand, but his fist hit the floor and no one was hit. Yun skillfully dodged the attack despite the fact that he was drunk. He then elbowed the man in the neck and asked him not to interfere with their conversation. Despite his size, the big man ended up lying on the floor unconscious. Yun's brother was watching what was happening and did not interfere with the conversation between the elders. He only asked Yun how long he was going to hide. The brother said that he knew about his fear of his older brother and asked him to stop this bravado because he knew that Yun did not want to go to him only because he was afraid of being deceived. This frankness made Yun furious again, and he walked over, grabbed the boy by the skin of his teeth, and swung his fist at him. But he did not beat the boy, saying that he was not at all afraid of this suicidal person. After that, he told his brother that he would go to the older man just to show him who he really was and rip off his mask. He did push-ups more than 25 times in one go, and she was just happy for him. She noticed that he was now the man he used to be, a world apart because he used to walk with great difficulty. After that, he did 20 jumps from a crouch. But what can we say about jumping? Because now he can stand in a rider's stance for more than 8 minutes, although he is still far from perfect. Taking the stick in her hands, she suggested that he increase the height of his jumps. She was very serious and said it was time to get ready. Swinging the stick 180 degrees, she raised it so that he would not get hit in the legs. 1, 2. Here was the second pass with the stick, and then the third. He successfully dodged them all. Noticing that he was doing a great job, she suggested that he do 2 more sets of 10 times. But he was already out of breath and said that he was done, otherwise it would only get harder. She thought he was just taking care of her and was very worried. She told him that she was having so much fun with him that she was ready to help him practice his jumps all night. But in his mind, he was not taking care of her. He was just so tired that he was going to die. When he fell to the ground, he said he was dead. She didn't understand, so he explained that it meant he was tired. But he realized that he shouldn't be chilling, so he struggled to get to his feet. She came closer, took him by the legs, and he stood on his hands to practice standing on his hands. While he was upside down, he noticed something in front of him. He told the girl that someone was coming. She turned him back to his feet and helped him stand up, and his brother was already approaching. As he got closer, his brother asked what was going on and thought that the couple was making a mess in the night forest. He called the boy a seizure patient and asked him how he learned to stand on his hands. The heir to the library got the idea to teach him a lesson. He started yelling at him, asking why he was acting like a drunken pig and insulting him. Yun listened and could not understand how he could call him a drunken pig. The brother explained that if Yun hadn't been drinking to the point of drunkenness, he wouldn't have been called that, and added that he knew that drinking was fashionable among young people, but he didn't think his brother would become one of them. Yun took this criticism in a particular way, because he was hearing it from someone who had tried to kill himself so many times that even death with a scythe had become a friend. He pointed his finger at his brother and said that he could not deceive him, that he had lost his memory, and believed that this was another attempt to die. These words were followed by even more specific ones, saying that everyone wants him to die, and everyone wants him to do it on his own, that all this would happen quietly, without any noise. But these words didn't affect him. He didn't take them seriously, and asked Yun why he was looking at him like that, adding that he didn't know anything about him. Xianghua was furious that this bastard had insulted her master again, and he asked her for a stick. At first, she didn't understand what he wanted to do with the stick, but he told her to bring it quickly. She just managed to say yes sir and ran to get the stick. In a moment, he had the stick in his hands and he began to wave it. It looked like an ordinary wooden stick, but in the hands of the strongest warrior in the world, it looked like a sword or an iron club. Now he realized one of the most important things. He hadn't forgotten his techniques and could use them thanks to his diligent study. he realized that he could beat his brother Yoon in a single blow or two. Yoon looked at the stick and could not believe that his brother wanted to challenge him to a fight, but he said it was his initiative and offered to teach him a lesson. They stood against each other, and energy began to gather around Yoon. Seonghwa stood silently and worried about her master. She didn't understand why he was getting into a fight, since the second heir was also learning martial arts, and she told him about it. But he just asked her to leave. Yoon spoke the words while addressing the fourth guards in the shadows, and he seemed to disappear. The guards were warned not to even think of interfering. Although he knew they were guarding him, it was better for them to stay out of it. Seonghwa pointed to the side and said they were there. My brother was stretching his arms, preparing for the battle, and said that if he managed to throw at least one punch, he would call him Big Brother. He also asked him not to complain after the fight about how badly he had been beaten. Yoon was confident in his abilities and started running at his brother with his fists. The latter was holding a stick and was ready to receive the attack. They faced each other, getting closer and closer. Yoon managed to dodge the first attack with the stick without difficulty, but a few surprises awaited him in the form of a boomerang stick that hit him. Yoon could not even expect his brother to succeed. After this attack, he sat under a tree, not realizing how it happened. When his brother approached him, he asked him to address him as his older brother. Yoon did not want to argue and said, "Of course, big brother." He added that it was easy to say, because he is. But then he added that he would rather die than be treated with respect as a true older brother. As soon as these words were spoken, my brother realized that he would have to continue beating him. He struck him with the stick one after another, so that Yoon's whole body felt the hardness of the material. Seonghwa even began to worry not about the owner, but about his younger brother, and asked him to stop. The youngest of them was also very worried, and also asked to stop. All the alcohol he had drunk in a month was coming out of this fool. It was impossible for him to understand how his older brother had become so strong in such a short period of time, but he needed to realize it and realize that he had really changed. At that moment, he remembered his younger brother's words that for the first time in a long time, he was able to feel happy in the presence of his eldest. He thought about it, but the alcohol made it hard for him to think clearly. His head was foggy, and even in this situation he did not believe that his brother had changed. Yoon was sure that he would not be able to fool him a second time. He believed that his brother was definitely planning to do something to himself. Chakra began to gather around Yoon's hand, and he shouted that he would never trust him again. He called his brother a demon and started attacking him with a spinning kick. Yoon thought he would finally make his brother calm down and thought his strength would help. But there was only a smile on his opponent's face. He was smiling because he had so easily dodged every blow. He noticed his brother's stubbornness and praised him. But since he was so stubborn, he would have to use another method. Yoon heard these words and could not understand what method he was going to use. His brother had a very interesting idea about a place that hurts a lot when you hit it with a stick, and it is located just below the waist between the legs. When Yoon put his head down to see what was hurting so badly, he had a vision of broken eggs and birds flying and singing. But this method works best against idiots like him. The younger one immediately rushed to his brother, shouting his name loudly. He already thought that his brother was dead, but when he ran closer, he saw a stick pointed directly at him. The older man asked him not to approach because he believed he was not done with him yet. Yoon's mouth was watering from the pain of hell, but now he will understand exactly how to treat his older brother. Having received several dozen more strokes of the cane on his body, pulled out of her master's excitement, Seonghwa decided to run over to him and hug him from behind to stop him somehow. It seems that he succeeded, because he saw Yoon kneeling in front of him and calling him his big brother. Yoon said that he recognized him as an older brother, and admitted that he was wrong. But his brother asked him several more times what he was thinking and who taught him to talk to his older brother like that. Yoon looked at him and realized that Han had never behaved like that before. At that moment, Yoon said he recognized that he was the strongest warrior in the world. Han seemed to have cooled down a bit after a few nice words from this alcoholic. But he came closer, started smiling in his face, and said that he had lost his sense of smell and needed to be taught a little more. He forced him to kneel down, and Yoon couldn't understand why this smile had led to such a result. Han explained that it was because Yoon didn't take his words seriously. Yoon stood on all fours, his ass turned to the moon and to the cane in his brother's hands, ready to receive 5 strokes. He was already striking his ass with the reverse twist of the stick. The brother used different striking techniques and then applied 25 times the force. Yoon felt this blow well, which could be seen in his face and heard in the scream that spread throughout the estate. Sometime later, he was lying on his bed, not understanding how it happened that there was not a single living thing on it. He could not understand why his older brother allowed himself to beat people like some kind of dog. Yun couldn't get out of his mind the moments when he called him Big Brother, albeit for his own survival. But he did. He thought about how many years had passed since he swore he would never call him that again. When he was a little boy, he used to always run after him and call him Big Brother, because he was widely known as a genius and a scholar, and Yun respected him very much. Because of this, when his brother's fault turned the whole family's life into hell, Yun felt this betrayal like no other, and hated him with all his heart. Deep down, he believed that his brother would become the same, and he was looking forward to it. But time after time, his hopes were dashed until they disappeared altogether. Now he can't believe that his older brother, who had been a vegetable for many years, beat him and became so agile and strong. His thoughts were interrupted by his younger brother, who came into his room. He had tears in his eyes and apologized for not realizing what a good person Yun was. He said that he saw Yun in a different light because he had allowed his older brother to beat him to help him feel strong. Yun let his older brother beat him on the back over and over again. In the eyes of his younger brother, all of Yun's actions seemed deliberate. Yun grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him well to bring him to his senses, asking if he really thought it could be intentional. Impossible. Did his blows really look trivial from the outside? It can only mean one thing. He's not just stronger than me. It means that his abilities are beyond measure. And it was at this moment that he thought about his older brother. Was he really the genius of the heavenly great library? After a mountain of words in support of Yun, the kid said that as his brother, he couldn't just let it go. Shedding tears, he turned and said he would avenge him. Meanwhile, the sun, which was just waking up, mesmerized with its beauty, and a new day of adventure began. Seongwon never stopped admiring his master because he had beaten his middle brother, and he was just training. But he also analyzed the battle, and there was something that made him dissatisfied. He had greatly increased his stamina, but his movements were far from perfect, and he was upset that he could not quickly deal with the young man. His soul had not yet attained full union with Bomahan's body, which meant that his spirit, Tze energy, and consciousness were not fully interacting with matter. He can develop the spirit by his own efforts, but this is not all. It is necessary that the consciousness also responds. Bomahan's soul is now dead, and his life experience and memories have died with it. It would be nice to somehow restore his memories. Seonghwa said that it seemed that the young master would not come to say good morning today because he had beaten his older brother. But Han was sure that he would come, because he was probably also happy about what he had done yesterday. Khan thought his younger brother was a good boy, polite, intelligent, and shrewd. He had never met such a wise young man in his life. Afterward, he heard a question from Seonghwa about how many people he had met in his life, since he almost never left his library. He laughed uncertainly and said that he had read a lot about different people in books. At that moment, the gate opened with a bang, and their younger brother walked in. The impact was so strong that everyone was shocked to see Booman. He pointed his finger at him and shouted, "Thief!" Approaching Han, Booman asked him how he, the elder brother, could have done such a thing. The middle brother allowed himself to be beaten, and he took and hit his balls. Picking up the nunchakus, the little boy wanted to take revenge for his middle brother. Han didn't know that Booman knew how to use nunchakus, or that anyone used them at all. Seonghwa could only guess how the owner would react to the boy's behavior and asked him about it. The middle brother appeared behind the boy's back as the nunchakus were swinging. He hit him on the head with his hand, called him a fool, and asked who uses nunchucks nowadays. The girl thought that the second owner had also come to attack the older brother together. However, Yun bowed before him and said that he came to say good morning, and asked how he slept. It seems that yesterday's flogging had taken its toll on him. But judging by the bags under his eyes, he did not sleep very well himself. After that, he suggested that his brother go out, and there their grandfather was waiting for them, sitting on a chair. They greeted him, and Khan noticed that someone was lying in bed. This person got up and looked at him, saying that he had not seen him for a long time. It was Yun and Booman's father and Han's uncle, Bomhan. Only now did the boy realize that his uncle had not come to visit him because he was bedridden. Were there no healthy people left in the family of the custodians of the great heavenly library? He took his nephew's hands and told him how happy he was to see him, and he did not think he would see him like this. The boy immediately felt the weakness in his hands and said he was very happy. He asked his uncle what illness he was suffering from, apologized for asking, and explained that he had lost his memory. It was very difficult for the uncle, but he began to explain. It was very strange that he avoided eye contact and explained with his back turned that it was not really a physical ailment, but more of a spiritual one. He seemed to be very afraid of Bomahan. He leaned over and assumed that it was because of Yun and asked him if that was true. My uncle explained that it was true. At some point, something got to Yun, and since then he has been getting drunk every day. How could he recover when his son behaved like that? His uncle asked him to help calm him down if he got drunk again. After the brothers left the building, they had to walk in the same direction. On the way, they talked about light topics at first. But as they walked, Khan realized that after meeting his uncle, he had only become more resentful. He realized that all the troubles in their family began with Bo Mahan. Even his uncle was afraid to look him in the eye. And not only his uncle, most of the people in the estate reacted to him in this way. Khan realized that all the troubles that had happened in their family needed to be revealed. This is the only way he could get his memory back. However, Yoon saw his brother thinking, and asked him why he was so focused and gloomy. Han replied that he was just thinking about something. Yoon then asked if he remembered their childhood, because he didn't even remember his present. Han couldn't say anything about his childhood. He talked about how he used to get lost in his thoughts when he was in the library. He and his younger brother knew that he could be found at any time in the library, but when Khan changed, he stopped leaving his room and going to the library altogether. This conversation gave Han a clue. The library might be the key to recovering his memories. He thanked Yoon, waving to him, and ran ahead, saying he would see him later. Meanwhile, his uncle and grandfather were in the room by the bedside talking about how Han was unrecognizable now. The uncle even had tears in his eyes, and the grandfather asked his son to let go of all the grief and move on with his life. The uncle seemed relieved and hoped that the memories would never come back to his nephew. But Yoon ran into their room and said that there was a problem. He told them that his older brother had gone to the library and wanted to recover his memory. Stunned, they turned their heads and did not know what to do. After all, they did not want to let him get to the bottom of the truth. Meanwhile, Khan had already been to the library, where Bo Mahan spent a lot of time. He wanted to find some clue here to restore his memory. He saw a huge library with many books on its shelves. It was easy to see that it hadn't been cleaned for a long time, because all the shelves were covered with dust. His eyes fell on one of the books that was standing unevenly. On the cover of this book was written Winter. It was noticeably less dusty. He picked it up and began to flip through it, hoping that it was not accidentally turned upside down. While flipping through the book, several sheets fell out. They fell to the floor, and he began to pick them up, not realizing what they were. Then he picked them up and saw that they were letters. The dates on all the letters were different, but they were all addressed to the same person, a certain Chu Yang. Perhaps the fact that Bo Makan was corresponding with someone was the reason for his transmigration into the body of the head of the Alliance. After that, he put the book back on the shelf, but the cabinet seemed to shudder and began to fall. He couldn't understand what was happening, because the mountain of books was flying right at him. The boy put his arms out to somehow block the impact of this mass of books. But he was unable to do anything, and he was nailed by the cabinet. Only it was a very strange feeling, as if an illusion was appearing around him. It seemed that when he put the book back, he activated a spatial trap. Now it became clear why the book is called Winter, because he was standing there, and it was winter around him. The illusion took over his mind. It was very realistic, because not only did everything around him look wintry, but it was also very cold. After a while, he looked completely different. His mother came up to him and asked if he was cold, asking him to give her his hand. She looked at them and saw that they were very red, but he put his hands on the snow layer and said that it was nothing for a man. She knew that he was a houseboy, and she just laughed at his courage, explaining that men get cold too. Then she handed him gloves and asked him to put them on. He was worried about his mom, but she knew that they would not go home until he finished the snowman. She looked at him and asked why he had made 3 snowmen. For him, it symbolized their family, so he made 3. Not just 1. His mom noticed that they looked very much like them, and offered to show his dad. But the boy panicked at that moment, and asked her not to tell his father anything yet. Then he approached the snowmen and looked at them carefully. After this vision, he looked at them and realized that they were his family. Therefore, it should be a happy memory. But a moment later, he was transported to another time. He saw his mom talking to his dad about whether he had seen the plum blossoms. And his dad said he had, and immediately remembered her, calling her his favorite. She sat on the bed and coughed, saying that she was fine. She was happy because she could look at the spring flowers right outside her window with her husband. He would come over and say that they would go together to look at the blooms as soon as spring came. She asked little Han, who was standing right in front of her, to come closer. It was Han, only then he was still small, but he was crying. He was crying very hard, looking at his mom. Her face was very good, but it was hard for her. She only said that she loved her son and that her love for him was boundless. At that moment, he could not understand where the tears came from. Then he realized that it was the memories of Bom Khan that remained in this body that were awakened. If he stays in this illusion, he will remember everything. And in a moment, he was transported to another memory. He saw his grandfather sitting on his knees and crying, repeating, "Why did you just die?" Now the boy realized that 10 days had passed since Bomhan's mother had died, how he had grown old sitting on the floor. The death of his wife broke his heart and will to live. That's how Bomkhan was left on the ground. Now everything became clear to him. He watched as the little boy came in. His son and middle brother were with the boy. They ran up to their grandfather asking, "What happened?" You could see the whole tragedy in his eyes. It seemed that his whole life had fallen on him the moment his mother died. He could not contain his emotions and was transported to the next memory. There he stood under a lonely, beautiful tree. He said to himself, "Mom, Dad, you told me that we would watch the plum blossoms together when spring comes. The plums are already blooming very beautifully. Where are you both? Or are you watching the blossoms from another world?" These were the words of a little boy who had lost his parents. He took the knife and brought it to his neck, ready to join them. But Yoon did not allow him to do so, begging him to stop. "Don't do this! Don't end your life!" Yoon cried. Yoon prayed with tears in his eyes that his brother would not commit suicide and leave him. However, his brother replied that he wanted to go where he belonged. After that, lying on the floor of the library, the illusion dissipated around him. His family was standing over him, trying to wake him up and asking if he was okay. He got up moaning in pain. He explained that he had just come to read books, and asked if they had come to read too. His younger brother quickly realized it was a joke and praised him for his skill. Yoon explained that they were very worried when they saw him faint. His grandfather was also very worried and asked if he was okay. "Grandpa, I just activated the trap and went to the snowfield," he said. After that, he turned to his grandfather and asked him a question. He asked if he could recover his memories, and everyone heard him. At that moment, his head started to hurt a lot. It seems to always happen when memories come back. There were unexplainable emotions on the faces of everyone in his family because they understood him. Seonghwa was the first to speak, saying that his jokes had gone too far. Yoon Bumon heard his older brother's appeal and felt joy in his words. He also addressed his grandfather. He assured everyone that he was fine and not to worry. He promised that he would never faint again. Almost everyone had tears on their faces because they were still not used to hearing Han say that. After that, he hugged everyone and said that he could finally die in peace. The day was coming to an end, and the sun was setting over the horizon. It was the first morning awakening after Bomkhan's memories returned. He felt very refreshed, as if he had slept for several days. His body was very light and his mind was clear. Now he could do whatever he wanted to do. Opening the window, he addressed one of the guards who was sitting on a tree branch. He told him that he wanted to meditate, and asked him not to let anyone into the room until he was out. He also asked his grandfather to keep this in mind, and the guard agreed. The boy realized that this was not a very good answer, because they were still worried. But he could do nothing else, because he had to gradually gain their trust. Now, it is important to circulate energy. Now that he had recovered Bomkhan's memories, his soul had completely merged with his body. His energy core was opening up to him, and his inner energy was taking shape. He also realized one important thing while studying Bomkhan's memories. Bomkhan had nothing to do with the exchange of souls. There is no information about it in his memoirs. There were many problems with the letters he exchanged with a certain Chu Yang. Perhaps it was done by someone else, but then it would be difficult to determine who could have done this. So it's important now to concentrate on returning to his previous level, as he has done before. 5 more years, or 10 at the most, and he will be able to return to his previous level. With the help of elixirs, herbs, and mystical creatures, this can be achieved even faster. Fortunately, this place is very favorable for development. The Great Heavenly Library is famous for its impregnable fortress, Chijangu. It is comparable in size to mountains, and traps are built into the walls, even into the arches. There are also traps in every zone. There is no place safer than Chijangu. Besides, it is an ancient family with a long history. You can buy anything there and benefit from everything. Now he didn't want to be just the eldest son of the Great Heavenly Library. No matter what anyone else said, he was a Hugong at heart, not a Bomhan. Author's note, we'll call him Library Heir. Also Han, because he's in his body. Meanwhile, the whole family gathered outside his window, watching him meditate, thinking he didn't notice. They couldn't understand why his face was shining so brightly, especially the surprise on his grandfather's face. Han's skin was dull and rough, and now the tone was light and even better than the girl's. This was good, but his grandfather was still worried about him, and the boy asked him to keep his voice down because he was very loud. When Yoon sneezed outside the window, everyone immediately froze. He apologized and scratched his head. feeling the awkwardness of the situation. A moment later, the window opened with a bang, and all of them, even more than Yoon, found themselves in a very awkward position. Han bowed to them and said he was glad to see them all. Grandpa explained that they had come because he had missed breakfast. Despite what he told his grandfather, he still did not believe him. Given Bom Khan's past behavior, this was not surprising, and so he stood up in a rack to prove his resolve to his grandfather. He said that he had really changed and got his memories back. His grandfather was not very happy about this news, because he knew what he had in his memories. But Han turned to him and said that he hadn't changed his mind since yesterday either, so everyone could be calm. His grandfather looked at him and saw how he had surpassed himself. The boy immediately began to hug everyone, his father and grandfather, without hiding his tears. What an atmosphere! He didn't know whether to cry with them or what to do, but he was overwhelmed with feelings because the whole family was rejoicing, not hiding their tears. After he brought back Bom Khan's memories, he realized something important. He realized why the Great Library of Heaven was not considered one of the 3 great libraries. At first glance, it was clear that the library had many magical seals on it. But even more importantly, he knew what they were. This knowledge and his skills would come in handy in the future. Now he turned to his grandfather and said that they needed to talk. According to Bom Khan's memories, there are 1 or 2 rotten places in the library. To restore the library to its previous state, the rotted roots need to be pulled out. During a conversation with his grandfather, he asked him for help in cleaning these roots, and the grandfather was ready to do anything for his grandson. He said that he would give him ginseng and multi-flowered gentian, which he had been keeping for 100 years. They were definitely not spoiled. The grandfather even said he would go and pick the best one himself to send him. Meanwhile, his brothers were standing at his door, and he didn't understand what they were doing there. So he asked them about it. Han said he had something to tell them. First, he turned to Yoon and told him that starting today, he had to find out what condition the library was in. This applies not only to the internal state, but also to external affairs, including the noble families and clans living nearby. However, Yoon replied that this was not necessary, because the manager had all the information about the families living in the area. He could ask him when he returned. But right now the manager is away on business, so he will only be able to ask in 10 days. Bom Han has memories of the manager, Guok Do. This trustworthy person was in charge of the library while the head of the family and other family members were heartbroken. However, the trust in the manager was very high. Did the second heir not know anything about the family property? But that was not all. He continued and expressed a desire to compete with him, because he had already honed his fighting skills. He remembered his older brother's words about getting down on all fours when he was holding a stick. He then told him to get down on all fours and spanked him hard, asking, "Who owns the great heavenly library, him or the manager?" He had only recently healed, but he had to answer. After that, he turned to Boomin and told him that he knew all about magic seals and asked how many seals were placed on their family. The latter replied that if he counted all of them, even the magic traps, it would be about 100. "Boomin, get down on all fours," came the order from farther away, and the light tapping of the stick against his palm added to the tension. After that, the younger one rushed to his leg, began to apologize, and said that he would be much more diligent now, but he was out of luck. It seems that he was busy with nunchakus in vain, when he should have been studying magic seals. He gave the younger man 3 days to check everyone who works for the library, as well as all the seals and mechanisms. If something needed to be fixed, he was to do it immediately and report back. The next person he turned to was Xianghua. She raised her hand and said that she would do her best, and he could assign her anything. After a while, there was a piece of paper on the table and a pen next to it. He told her to take the pen and write under dictation. She did not understand why, but she did everything he told her. The first sentence was, "Dear Chu Yang, if this is a letter for Mr. Chu, wouldn't it be better if you wrote it yourself? How will he believe it's from you if the handwriting is different?" asked Xianghua. But his handwriting was different now too. He had tried several times to replicate Bom Han's handwriting, but it was to no avail. Even if it looked similar, the details were still different. If you look closely, handwriting is like a fingerprint. It is impossible to fake. It was clear that before she sent the letter, she would definitely report to her grandfather. He didn't want to discuss the changes in her handwriting, so he decided it would be better if she wrote it. He told her that he wanted to look at her handwriting. And anyway, he wanted to invite Chu Yan to the library. She was happy to hear this because she was hoping to see Mr. Chu. She began to tell him about him, that he was very courageous, loyal, and generally the best in the world. Then she asked the owner to dictate, and he was thinking that it was clear from Bom Han's correspondence with Ju that the latter was not in his right mind. If Seonghwa knew what horrible and stupid things they wrote to each other, she wouldn't think he was so cool. He started dictating to her what to write, thinking that the manager would be back in 10 days. He was an interesting person. Meanwhile, as they wiped the dust off the flower leaves, they discussed that the heir to the great heavenly library had really changed. However, the man, looking out the window, could not believe it. He replied that even if the whole world changed, the heir would never change, and he thought that the heir had decided to play a trick on everyone. He had been waiting for this for a long time to finally support the heir apparent he had been waiting for. While putting the flower pot on the shelf, he slipped, and the flower pot broke. It fell to the floor and shattered into small pieces. The man thought that he still needed to help the heir to the great heavenly library. He sat meditating, but something distracted him. A smell that spread throughout the room did not allow him to meditate in peace. He didn't understand what it was, but he hadn't smelled such a terrible odor in a long time. It was even worse than the breath of old people or a corpse that had been rotting in the trash for a week. He got up and realized that he could no longer sit in such conditions. By that time, he had already recovered one of his 3 self-defense techniques. Whole blood is the use of one's own blood. With this method, you can easily repel the enemy's attacks on energy points. The moment the enemy attacks a protected point, you can use it to counterattack. Although he hadn't practiced much, he was satisfied that he could achieve this state of blood. But the stench did not allow him to concentrate. He decided to go out the door to see what was going on. Seonghwa was standing outside the door, and she couldn't stand the smell either. She didn't know what the smell was, but she explained that it came from nowhere. She was worried that this stench could eat away at her beautiful, delicate skin. They quickly left the room and found themselves outside. The street was full of people who also could not stand the smell. On the way, he ran into 2 of his brothers who were ready to explain what was wrong. The middle brother explained that Boomin was fixing the east gate, and it seems that he had ruined the air throughout the library. This gate is rarely used and the security seal was broken. Boomin denied his guilt and said it was not his fault. He was ready to prove his innocence as he had many witnesses with him. Although he has weaknesses, he is a good person and has never lied to anyone. Moreover, when it comes to magic, he is much more capable than Bom-han. The heir to the library ordered his younger brother to check everything again and find the source of the stench, and Yoon to help his brother. He himself quickly turned around and walked in the other direction, saying that he had things to do. Meanwhile, on a busy street nearby, he decided to find out what happened to Murim's world after his death. As he walked down the street, he noticed that he didn't know anyone here. Before Bom-kan fell into depression, he had socialized with many famous scholars and writers. He hoped to meet one of them and asked the girl to go for a drink. She immediately agreed, and he did not expect anything else. The soldiers sitting next to him began to discuss the stench of the boys, and Seonghwa immediately asked them if they knew who the owner was. He started talking to the girl about books. She was crazy about him, thinking that her master had read a lot of literature and admired him. The girl brought the drinks they had ordered to their table, but when he looked out the window in front of him, he saw people. There was the second heir of the House of Flaming Loyalty and the third heir of the Soman family. They were not close to Bom-kan, but this level of familiarity was enough to find out Murim's current state. But he didn't want to spoil their mood so quickly, because he considered himself old and realized that he needed to give the young people time to talk. As soon as he started to think about how to approach them, he heard shouting in the cafe. A dissatisfied customer complained that there was a mosquito in his soup. The chef apologized to him, saying that he would not take payment for the soup and would give him a bottle of wine. But the customer replied that he did not need either wine or soup. The client said he needed 10 silver coins. 10 silver coins and the matter will be closed, he said. The chef was confused and did not know what to say, but the customer insisted, threatening that otherwise the restaurant would be finished. Han thought that such scoundrels are everywhere and turned to Seonghwa. At the same moment, the sword blade became bare. It flew from the man right next to the cook's neck. But at that moment, the girl interrupted them. Standing right in the center of the corridor and addressing the man, she held a bag in her hands and told the man that she noticed his indignation at the mosquito soup. She added that her owner had asked her to give him this payment because he did not like noise during his meal. She asked him to take the money and calm down, because there was no need to make noise. He was well dressed, had a white face and a slender body, and his guards did not look strong. Moreover, if they were strong, he would not have offered them money. But the man was not satisfied with 10 silver coins and told the girl that it would not be enough. He added that he would be satisfied with only 30 silver coins. At this point, Khan intervened, noting that the man had not only forgotten his place, but was also greedy. Khan told him so, and asked the girl what she thought about it. She could do nothing but agree with her master. The man did not understand what was said to him and asked again, but before he could say a few more words, the girl's arm was around his neck. This was immediately followed by a blow to his body. It seems that this girl was no ordinary girl, as she was skilled in martial arts. She could easily throw this big guy, and so hard that he flew out of the cafe right through the window. People who were just walking down the street saw the body falling in front of them. As moral compensation, she gave the cook a bag of money. That was the end of their lunch, and they started to leave the cafe. But as soon as Han was at the exit, she froze. She saw something that alarmed her very much. It was the man's friends from the Guanghui sect, who looked very outraged. They asked who had done this. Han, without hesitation, pointed to Songhua and said that it was her. She only thought that she had to protect her master, to be his shadow, and she started yelling at the men to watch their words. She explained that this idiot had started the fight first and asked them to leave, but their plans were not to leave. They wanted to kill her. The leader of the sect ordered all his soldiers to capture her immediately. Meanwhile, the people Khan wanted to talk to were looking out the window because they heard a lot of noise outside. They noticed the fight and recognized someone, namely, the heir to the great heavenly library. She didn't wait long, and with the first kick in the face, she knocked the scoundrel out. Even though she noticed that they were outnumbered, she would soon deal with them. The third heir to the Soman family and the second heir to the fiery loyalty, Zhang Ye, appeared. He greeted them warmly and explained that his health had improved significantly for the first time in a long time. Together, they decided not to stand still, but to sit down at the table and have a quiet chat. The girls were also invited to join them. It was the daughter of the owner of the White House and the daughter of the Master Zhongwol. He noticed that they looked even better than he had described them in his poems. Through them, he hoped to learn more about the heir apparent. Meanwhile, his faithful Sionhua continued to fight. He introduced her to everyone as his companion. When she heard the word companion, she lost control and turned away, which was her mistake, because she missed the blow. They sat down at a table covered with delicious food, and began to discuss that lately there has been a lot of commotion around Hugong, although it is not so noticeable. The guy suggested that maybe they couldn't believe that their leader had died. To be honest, the others couldn't believe he was dead either. They talked about his skill, which reached the heavens. In all of Murim, he had no equal. His only downside, they said, was that he was fat, but many thought he still looked cool. The second heir thought so too. Master Zhongwol's daughter told me about rumors that seemed impossible to her. After the riot with the robbers, she began to believe them. She was surprised that he was interested in the situation in Murim and Hugong's character. In response, he told her that there is no place in the world that is not part of Murim. Wherever you are, you still say it's all Murim. Through this conversation, he learned something that interested him. It was getting dark, and they thanked each other for the evening. The third heir was sad to see Bohm go and told them that he was going to his mother's house tomorrow. They were happy to meet him and wished him a safe trip home. This meeting was productive for him, because he learned more about himself and his past body and what was happening in the Murim alliance. After talking to him, the boys also realized that after the heir returned, the rumors about the library would spread. They couldn't wait to see what he would do next. As he walked on, he turned to the girl, but she remained silent, feeling uncomfortable because the stench had not yet disappeared. Turning his head to her, he noticed that something was wrong with her face. After a while, they were already at the mansion. Yoon was waiting for him and told him that fortunately the smell was not so strong anymore. But he didn't think so, because the stench was still very strong. The smell was so incredible that it was hard to resist. They realized that it was coming from a hexagonal serpent that had appeared in front of them. The hexagonal serpent is a spiritual being in the form of a snake, one of the 100 great spirits. He is the cause of the Oni. The snake has a yellow hexagonal shell on its head, red scales, and green blood. Thanks to the green blood of the hexagonal snake, one can significantly increase internal energy and gain immunity to any poison. But it has one very big drawback. It has a terrible stench. It's so strong that even if someone manages to get the snake's blood, they can still vomit from the stench. In addition, getting blood will be very problematic. If you first pour the blood into a bowl and then drink it, half of the blood's benefits are lost. For maximum effect, it is better to suck the blood directly from the snake by biting its skin. Everyone stank, without exception, and it was impossible to contain it. So impossible that everyone covered their noses with whatever they could. Everyone who was in the estate suddenly found urgent matters. More precisely, everyone was looking for reasons to get out of there as soon as possible. Finally, he sucked the blood out of the snake. The grandfather was worried about the boy, because the smell was so nasty that he even thought that maybe everything might not be so good after sucking the blood. But Han said that everything was fine, despite the stench. He just covered his nose. When he heard that everything was fine, my grandfather also ran to the door. He didn't want to stand for it. He couldn't stand it himself. He was holding on with his last bit of strength. But now he had a much better chance of regaining his former strength within 5 years. Anyway, the 3 sources of power. This bomb Khan knew all about them. The hexagonal snake, medicinal herbs, and a poisonous insect are considered to be the 3 main sources of energy. If you eat all 3 sources, the effect will be incredible. In the past, he himself did not know about the benefits of plants and insects. Their effect is comparable to the power of the 5 great spirits, so he had to get the other 2 sources of energy. Han knew that Yun was standing outside the door and asked him to come in. Yun came out, afraid that he had done something wrong, and immediately apologized to his brother. The snake Han held up to his face continued to stink terribly. Yun asked why he should throw it away. The answer was that it was pointless, and that he should not throw away such a valuable thing. It needs to be dried. First, the skin for 4 days in the sun, and then a week in the shade. Then divide it into equal parts and put it away for storage, Han said. Yun didn't understand the benefits of the skin, but Han explained that he needed to read books. In case of illness, even someone who knows martial arts can lose a significant amount of energy. The hide contains the necessary substances for recovery. He also asked that Yun get him a 5-day supply of Purging, a nutrient made from pine bark. Han quoted from a book. To increase the efficiency of a snake's blood, you need to reduce your food intake for several days. So he said he would not eat for about 5 days. Yun, exclaiming how dare he even ask the question, ran off to find a sunny spot to dry the snake's skin. Hua was also standing outside the door. He knew this and asked her if she had heard. He had another request for her. He wanted her to ask her grandfather to get him a medicinal plant and a poisonous insect. He asked her not to ask too many questions, but just to explain to her grandfather. He would understand everything himself. 6 days passed after Han absorbed the blood of the hexagonal snake. The chakra around him became much more powerful than before. He felt a new power in him that seemed incredibly powerful. A smile lit up his face as he realized that he had reached the level of 2 stars. Looking around the room, he realized something important. His eyesight had greatly improved, and he could hear voices coming from far away. His vision and hearing had become incredibly sensitive. Analyzing his new brothers, he realized that they were not so bad. The more time he spent with them, the nicer they seemed. As he approached the mirror, he noticed that his clothes were stained again. Probably the result of the merging of body, mind, and spirit that had removed all the toxic energy. For a long time he could not get used to his new face, but now he was beginning to feel more comfortable with this appearance. However, analyzing his body, he thought it was too thin. His arms would look more attractive when they struck. As he moved to the 2nd level, he realized that his martial art had to improve as well. He thought about how to test his new abilities, and wondered who to train with. The first technique that came to his mind was the Kurun technique. He decided to try it on his right hand first, and his fingers started looking in different directions as if they were broken. This technique allowed to rebuild the bones in the body, giving them new shapes and possibilities. This technique was originally used to enter rooms through small openings, but it could also break a wall without shrinking one's own body. Using this technique against enemies was much more useful. Han tried to use it and succeeded a little. But because of his low level, the process was very slow. It reminded him of a monk who knew the magic of dice. He approached the head of the alliance and said that he was working on a new technique, offering to watch. The head then thought it was easier to just kill someone than to risk getting trapped. Even now, he could not understand why the monk had created such a useless technique. Sodam came to his room with a change of clothes. She asked if he had finished his workout, and Khan explained that his body felt much better than before. When he reached for the clothes she was holding, she turned to him. She explained that she had to go to a servants' meeting, but Khan said that such trifles were not to be reported, and that he was already dressed in new clothes. However, Sodam considered herself his shadow and thought she had to report everything to him, continuing to mutter in his ear. Then she said she was leaving. The 3 flags fluttered in the light wind. The warriors standing in front of Han were told that the heir to the great heavenly library had changed and had abandoned his past way of life. Han is the heir and representative of the great library of heaven. Naturally, he will socialize with respectable people. So, the guards must not only protect him from danger, but also from damage to his reputation. One of the guards said that the Guanghui sect had gotten wind of their humiliation and were planning to attack the great heavenly library. Therefore, it is their duty not only to protect the heir, but also to ensure the safety of everyone in the library, which is the meaning of their lives. As soon as he finished speaking, a man approached him. He whispered important information in his ear. He said that the heir was looking for him, without explaining the reason. Sodam heard this, and did not understand why the owner was looking for the leader of the guards, as he had never done so before. She guessed that perhaps it was about a meeting of the guards, but Khan called him anyway. Could it be something urgent? She thought she should stay with him. Khan told everyone that the heir was calling him, turned around and started to walk away. Sodam hoped that nothing bad had happened to him. Meanwhile, he was sitting at the table, with books in front of him, and he was holding another one in his hands, studying literature in detail. Suddenly he heard a knock on the door. The leader of the guards was at the door and introduced himself. Khan did not understand what was happening, as he knew they were about to have a meeting, and he asked through the door what was going on. The man replied that he had important information. Khan allowed him to come in and started to run through his mind if there was anything bad between them, but he couldn't remember anything. Khan asked why he came if they were having a meeting. The leader replied that he had come to deliver important information that could not be postponed. This interested Khan, and he was ready to listen. The leader said he would like to be more active in helping him. This was surprising because he had never asked for it, but his eyes fell on what the leader had in his hands. The leader put a knife on the table, a very beautiful handmade knife. He asked the heir apparent if he hadn't said he wanted to die. At that very moment, they were preparing a plan to help the heir, in quotation marks, the heir. They recalled how he had refused to take the poison, which was contrary to their plans because he did not want to enter the next world. They were surprised that the heir hadn't died, but it was even better. If he decided to commit suicide, the great heavenly library would definitely fall into ruin. Hans saw that the boys looked worried and asked them what was bothering them. They replied that they had heard from the second heir that the first heir was studying martial arts. The new warrior didn't understand why they were so worried, and asked them why. The answer was, "It's nothing special." The Khan tried to encourage them, saying that there was nothing to worry about. Even if the heir was learning martial arts, it was unlikely to change anything. However, they had an advantage. Everyone trusted them, and this was in line with their plan to bring the heir to a lethal end. They couldn't just kill him. But if the heir started to resist, the only way out was to cut his throat and say that he had done it himself. The Khan continued to ask them not to worry, calling it a simple task. Back to the current situation. Khan is sitting at a table, with a knife next to him, and a man standing in front of him offering to kill him. Khan realized that this bastard had organized a meeting of the guards to be alone with him. He had to find out how deeply this man was involved in the conspiracy. He told the man that he no longer wanted to die so badly. He added that he was not the same person he used to be. The commander was ready to move on to Plan B. He was sure that Khan just needed to stay still, so he stabbed him right in the stomach. By hitting the point of support of the sky and the point of the strong river, the whole body could be paralyzed. What an asshole this Bomhan was. As long as he wanted to die, death did not come. But as soon as he wanted to live, it was there. What would happen if the heir died at the moment when everyone was just rejoicing at his thirst for life? It will be a complete destruction. The elder will die, his uncle will die. The second and third heirs will lose their minds, drown their grief in alcohol, become insignificant people locked in their chambers, and everything will be over. Khan realized that this idiot was not the only one involved, and asked him who else was involved. Slamming his hands on the table, he began to shout that nothing would change even if he listened to what he had to say. Then Khan said he had changed his mind. He got up from his chair. The commander thought that he could not move because he was paralyzed, but Khan was able to stand up. It was amazing because he did not expect Han to have such hidden abilities. However, the commander was counting on his sword, which he held in his hand. Khan's hand gripped the corner of the table tightly. In one fell swoop, Khan tossed the table like a piece of paper. The sword completely lost its effectiveness as it collided with the table. In a calm voice, Khan asked not to destroy the furniture. The commander wondered why he reacted the way he did and why Han was so calm. The commander was nervous like a frightened girl holding a sword. He concentrated all his energy in his hand. Han just watched his hand, wondering what he was trying to create. A dragon or maybe a tiger? What's in this bastard's head, he thought. Oh, that's right, he's trying to pretend to be a kitten. Easily dodging this cat attack, Khan managed to avoid being hit. The commander thought it was just luck, but it was far from it. He was sure that luck would not help him anymore and tried to attack with his sword. However, the circumstances were such that the sword missed again. The Khan gave him half an hour, asking him to show everything he could do during this time. However, the commander, like an idiot, thought that Khan was just allowing himself to live for half an hour because he would soon kill him. But this was far from the case. Khan managed to easily dodge the sword blows. Left then right, he successfully avoided each attack, and then 2 of Khan's fingers were right next to the commander's stomach. After 2 precise touches, the inevitable happened. The man felt unbearable pain in his lower back, and his face changed dramatically. Fortunately, he did not have time to block all the energy points. The commander made a mistake when the second heir said that he had been beaten by his older brother. He took it as a joke. This meant that it was true. But that's not all the commander's trump cards. He also saved something for Khan. His sword began to transform into something incredible, and attacked from different angles. Surprisingly, Han dodged this attack as well, leaving the sword stuck in the wall. But then another attack. 30 blades hovered over Khan, ready to attack him. The blades flew past him at high speed, each one capable of inflicting significant damage. But none of them hit. The commander could not understand how Khan dodged his attacks, moving with a normal step. All this time he was within range, so why did none of the attacks succeed? But they didn't notice that the half an hour Khan had mentioned had passed. Khan was tired of giving the commander a head start and letting him attack. The commander still tried to put up some kind of defense in the form of his palm. But Khan's 2 fingers, with their tips concentrated with very strong energy. They are more accurate than an archer who has not missed the red dot on the target since childhood, and these 2 fingers hit every point on the commander's body. His body was shaking with pain, and he could not understand how this happened, so he asked Han. He asked how Khan could have hit the points that could have killed him but didn't, and he asked what Khan wanted. Did he want him to go over to his side? It seemed to Khan that the commander had a talent for comedy. Why did he need a man like him? The commander's expression resembled that of a small dog that was not allowed to chew on a bone. Khan asked him to stop talking nonsense and made him kneel down. After 2 up and down movements of his hand, the following happened. The commander's mouth and nose started bleeding. The pain was incredible. He was screaming, "Master, have mercy on me!" But no one was listening to him. He shouldn't have been so arrogant. He had to understand who he was challenging. Khan was in no hurry to kill, and asked again who else was involved in the plot. After the question, Khan asked the commander to be quiet for a minute. He thought he heard someone coming, 2 of them. Looking out into the corridor, he saw his brothers and asked them to come quickly. They were happy that he felt their presence and thought that their older brother was waiting for them. Khan opened the door for them and even invited them in. They were very pleased. They were very surprised to see the beaten security captain on the floor. Yoon asked Han if it was really Jonggyu's guard. The young man was very shocked, thinking that the plague had come to them. Seeing the body of the commander, from whom he did not expect any threat, and wanted to take him to a doctor, Han allowed the commander to speak and asked him who decided to do this and who started it all. Yoon asked his brother what was going on. All that came out of the lump of meat were words. "Have mercy, I made a mistake, please." The commander said he would tell everything, and admitted that their leader was the manager. The conspiracy involved 8 guards out of 32, including him and his deputies, 1 person from the scientific staff, and 5 from the accounting department. Punching the table, Yoon shouted in an angry voice, "Damn manager Guak!" He didn't understand how a person could be so evil. Han was also furious with them, not understanding what they had been doing all this time, and how they could have brought the family to this state. The kid explained in a simple way that their roof was leaking too. Then Khan realized that the body of the previous bumkan who had lived there was to blame. Turning to Buman, he asked him to activate the outer seals and raise the barrier around the library so that not even a fly could get out. Yoon said he would use the dark black storm technique to catch the guards involved in this crime. A dark black storm is when the sky and earth are engulfed in darkness, and lightning starts to strike. This technique does not allow people to find each other even in a crowd. But Khan said that this was not necessary, because everything was not so serious as to make such a fuss. The main thing is to find the manager, the organizer of this uprising. He then asked if Yoon knew the weaknesses of those whom Jonggu had exposed. Yoon knew something about Jong, namely that he loved his family very much. Yoon said that in order to protect his family, Young was willing to commit treason. With the plan in place, they were ready to begin. Meanwhile, the meeting continued. The guy explained that the commander was delayed. Suddenly, a giant blue ray hit from the sky. Everyone who was there could not understand what it was. Something fell from the sky, and on the ground was a pile of meat. It was a layer of flesh, and voices were coming from it. "Have mercy!" And then everyone realized whose voice it was. Sunhua could not believe her eyes. Their commander was in such a state, even though he had gone to meet his master. What had happened to him? She thought that something had happened to her master, and began to torment herself with thoughts that she was a very bad bodyguard. Yoon appeared in front of them, and explained that the bastard had tried to kill his older brother, but was overcome by a curse. Tears again appeared in Shunghua's eyes. but this time they were from joy at seeing her master alive. Han joked with her, saying, "I think your commander is lying there." He looked at one of the guards and did not understand what was wrong with his face. It felt as if he had never seen anything like it. The other 6 guards looked the same. The girl turned her head toward them, and a ray of clarity shone through her mind. The situation was soon resolved. The guards involved in the plot did not even deny their guilt. The uprising was suppressed. They were all confused by the appearance of the heir, because they thought he would die at the hands of the commander. Speaking of the commander, he had stolen half the library. Now Khan sat over the books and thought about how to return all these treasures and books that had been sold. At that time, Khan's brother came to the library. He did not know what to do or say when he entered the library. The first question he heard was, "You have a very beautiful wife and a cute daughter, right?" Falling to his knees, the brother confessed that he was a wretch and had committed a very great criminal act, forgetting virtue and allowing his heart to be poisoned. He said that although he had been threatened, he deserved 1,000 punishments and was even ready to die on the spot if Khan ordered it, but he wanted to protect his wife and child so that they would not be touched. The heir assured him that he did not even think of killing his daughter and wife. Looking at him, Khan realized that this man could not be the weakest, because he managed to turn their commander from a man into a pile of shit. This relaxed look was even more frightening than the stern one. My brother continued to crawl on his knees and ask his master to give him an order. Khan immediately asked him to bring the manager to him by nightfall. He assured him that he should not worry. It was an easy matter for him. But he was reminded that if he went off plan or did something wrong, the consequences would be very bad. This meant that Khan could change his mind. If suddenly his resolve began to leave him, he needed to remember that the heir could change his mind. He warned that he did not want to do anything wrong, but he might have to. The brother promised to do everything he could to bring in a manager, because he realized that if the heir changed his mind, his wife and child would suffer. Where the lily grows near the icy water. Looking at the reflection in the water, they talk about how the heir had died. However, one of them wondered if he had done it himself or if he had been helped. He was informed that it was a suicide. Adding irony to the conversation, he raised his eyes to the sky and turned to the heir, asking why he had done this and how those who loved and appreciated him could live now. Shedding a tear, he laughed, adding irony, and asked how to live now. Then he turned to the boy and, laughing, asked if he had done well. He replied that he had done so well that his heart was trembling. However, he wondered why he was the one who reported this information, not the commander. He explained that there was nothing strange about it, because he was also on their side. However, the suspicion was aroused by the fact that he did not know whether he would participate in the plan because of his wife and child. And today he came alone to report such an important event. After bowing, he explained that today was a special day for him, and it was a great honor to report on his own. It seems that he was successful in bluffing, because the commander said that now they would have more work to do, as they had to deal with the funeral. The acting skills of this man are at the highest level, and the genius of the one who came up with the plan is at the highest level. This bastard was definitely not expecting to see Khan and his 2 brothers. Immediately, sweat began to drip down his face and under his nasty mustache. Khan ordered to grab the manager, and soon he was hung upside down with a rope. The grandfather learned about the situation and reassured his grandson, saying that they should not interrogate the manager cruelly. Khan simply asked him to accept it. The grandfather agreed, but still asked not to kill him. The manager, hanging upside down, thought that even the chief librarian was asking him not to kill him and hoped to stay alive. After a moment, the head librarian left them, and Xianghua became excited, holding a stick, and couldn't wait to beat him. He shouted at her, but she stood there smiling and was not going to leave the room. On the contrary, she brought her baton with her, saying that she was his shadow. At that moment, Khan started talking to the detainee. He explained to him that he was now the head. However, noticing the surprised faces, he realized that he was not the head in this body. Coughing to smooth out the awkwardness, Khan continued to say that he was now the boss of the team and asked to tell the truth. Who was behind the assassination attempt? The manager could barely speak, but managed to say that the heir was very wise. He began to explain that the Black Squad was behind it all. The Khan knew about the Black Squad because it was in the Murim, but he had no idea that it could exist here. He went on to explain that the Black Squad was secretly created by the powerful Soman clan, along with Master Junwol. The Soman clan is one of the most powerful, and although Master Jungwol's sect is small, it is highly respected. When he first met them, the 2 did not seem suspicious. Perhaps this is not surprising given the state of the library, which has become a free, chaotic place. In addition, the Soman clan leader gave the impression of a kind and trustworthy person. However, the heir didn't know Master Jungwol, because he had never met him before. So he approached the manager and asked him to tell the truth. The latter, in turn, decided to tell an interesting fact and warned him that he would not be able to avoid punishment by just talking. Hanging his head down, he explained that if he had decided to act, he would have said something more convincing. He failed to eliminate the heir and the chief librarian, driving them to suicide. So they decided to act through the Black Squad. As soon as the Black Squad infiltrates the library and destroys it, the clan and the sect will blame it. Now it's clear where the hexagonal snake came from. But wanting to minimize the damage to the library, he opposed the plan and exchanged a sign with the Soman clan so they would not be able to deny their involvement in the plot. Left alone with Xionghua, she asked the master if the manager was telling the truth, because she could not believe that such respected organizations as the Xiaoman clan and the Cheonwol sect wanted to take over the library. She suggested that maybe the Black Squad sign was not real. Even if it was true, they would deny that they had created the squad. He realized that he needed to confirm everything, so he asked her to go to the manager's house to find the sign. And he decided to make a bait for these idiots. She was very interested in this, because she did not understand what kind of bait he was talking about. After a while, he stood there waiting for someone. All the guards, as one, shouted that they were waiting for his orders and were ready to do whatever he said. It's interesting that they became so determined after what happened to the manager. In fact, they could be trusted. They did not turn away from the library despite all the difficulties. "Forward to battle! This is what it means to be a real warrior," he shouted, addressing everyone. But they would not die today, he happily told them. He allowed them to rest and spend the day outside the library, but ordered them to return tomorrow. He wanted them to go to restaurants, and they spread the rumor that the Soman clan and the Cheonwol sect had formed the Black Squad and were trying to take over the Great Heavenly Library. They had to make sure that the whole province was talking about it by tomorrow. Everyone shouted as one that everything was clear. If the Xiaoman clan and the Cheonwol sect are really behind all this, these rumors will really force them to put the plan on hold. They will also start to come up with alibis. The heir apparent had foreseen all the steps in advance. He expected that if the manager was lying, they could easily settle everything by saying it was just a rumor. One man, exhausted, ran to the heir apparent. He asked him if he had found the sign. However, he only apologized and explained that the manager's entire house was empty and he could not find anything. The whole house had already been turned upside down, and the sign was gone. He begged to spare his wife and daughter. Xionghua confirmed his words because she saw everything with her own eyes. She was panicked because she realized that they had lost the opportunity to find the evidence. Han said it didn't matter. They didn't need the sign. The main thing was that someone was trying to hide the drugs, which meant that the manager wasn't lying. Now the main task was to get the word out. This was the only way his plan would work. Rumors spread very quickly through the streets. Some people believed them, and some did not. The news of the connection between the Soman clan and the Cheonwol sect spread like hotcakes at the market. The conversations also touched on the Great Heavenly Library, and people had a hard time comprehending all these rumors. The boy ran to his brothers and asked if they knew what he had just seen. They were eagerly waiting for his story. He told them that the one who had been spreading the rumors all night had gone to the hill where the Great Library of Heaven stands. This was very exciting news for them. People were swearing and beating each other up over it. The fact that the library was spreading the rumor meant to them that it was true. The woman had 2 pimples on her forehead, but she was sure that if the library suspected something, then Somun and Zhongwol would soon get what they deserved. Her brothers laughed, and she explained that while they were laughing, the library was about to catch a big fish. The fish stood for the Soman clan, and the information was slow to reach them. The kid didn't understand because there was no proof, but they were sure the library knew what it was doing. Anyway, they all decided to stay on the library's side. Meanwhile, in the library, they were unable to return everything, finding only 3 books about magic seals, 2 paintings, and 1 porcelain vase. Most of the things the manager had sold were still within the country, so it wouldn't be difficult to return them. Yoon assumed that the items were in the possession of the Soman clan or the Zhongwol sect, adding that they must have been greedy to want to own the priceless artifacts. The brothers asked Yoon to take the opportunity to bring the Soman clan and the Zhongwol sect to light and take revenge on them. He immediately asked them, or rather asked them to explain how they planned to take revenge. To him, they seemed like naive children who did not realize how many warriors were in their sect. After that, he hit the boy's leg with his hand. The kid thought that he was up to something, since he made such a sign. But Yoon explained that his knee was just itching and added an uncertain laugh. Then he said that he had to report everything to the Murim. "Isn't that the point of a Murim's existence?" the boy asked. Yoon explained that their leader was already dead. but the boy suggested that there were still strong martial artists in the Murim. However, the question arose whether this would work, since the Seoman clan and the Jeonwol sect had more influence than they did. They asked their brother what he thought about it, but when they looked at him, they could not understand his emotions. He called them both pathetic losers, saying that instead of solving things themselves, they just wanted to put everything on others. Yoon explained that he would come forward himself and say everything he knew about Seomun and Youngwol. Seonghwa, as usual, ran in, opening the door of the room and started screaming, "Master!" She could barely say Cheonwol sect because she was so out of breath. She explained that the leader of the Cheonwol sect had come here with his daughter. His daughter could not understand whether they had really come there. Looking around, she noticed that there was nothing here, but he explained to her that this was the entrance to the Great Heavenly Library, and everything else was just an illusion. It looked like an ordinary forest place with no signs of anything out of the ordinary. Climbing higher, they found themselves on a hillside. The leader pointed to the sky, pointing to the clouds. He explained that it was all just an illusion. It was the leader of the Cheonwol sect, Banguan. He kicked a stone lying on the ground and took a step forward. It was followed by a second, third, and fourth step, and they were getting closer to their goal. The girl did not understand anything, constantly asking if it was an illusion. He repeated, "Yes, it's an illusion, right?" Suddenly the words came out, "Welcome, enter the Great Library of Heaven." The illusion began to dissipate, and the girl was very stunned by what she saw. A large building appeared in front of them, the entrance to the Heavenly Library itself. They sat down at a table, and everyone was laughing, although in fact only he was laughing. He was very glad that the chief librarian and the heir had received him so warmly. However, the chief librarian's face did not show it, nor did the expression on the heir's face convey any positive or warm emotions. This laughter only surprised the heir, because it was the first time he had heard it. It was something unusual. No one in their right mind would laugh like that. Is he trying to distract me with his strange laughter? The boy wondered. Unable to stand it, he asked, "Are you okay, master?" And added that he did not understand his laughter. The owner also did not understand the boy's question, and explained that he had been laughing like that since childhood. Khan used his best weapon, deciding to fight him in the same way. He started laughing, making strange sounds. It was all so incomprehensible that he even asked why the heir was making such strange sounds, and continued to laugh even louder. Grandpa could not hold back his tears when he heard this. His ears hurt so badly that he could have fried potatoes on his head, because that laughter was like a burning fry. They had been talking for a long time, but nothing had changed. What an interesting person this man was. The heir decided to leave the elders alone, but the latter waved him over and asked him to stay and sit with them. After their conversation, he realized that the Cheonwol sect had nothing to do with the incident. A person with such an infectious laugh could not have planned anything like that. In addition, he had come here with his beloved daughter, which proved the innocence of the Cheonwol sect, which would not even offend a fly. From this, he concluded that the truth can only be reached by asking the manager. Now he needed to get all the information he could from other people. He approached his younger brother and asked what they were talking about so cheerfully. At that time, Lady Ban was talking to his brothers and was delighted with the conversation, not noticing how quickly time was passing. He then asked her about the rumors that were defaming the Cheonwol sect and the Soman clan, and asked her opinion on it. She explained that she had just wanted to visit the library because of these rumors, and had begged her father to take her with him. He replied that he was very happy to meet her because of the rumors, and was delighted that she did not laugh like her father. Yoon explained that the lady was very educated, telling them about martial arts techniques that could paralyze the enemy by pressing on special points. However, during the last meeting, she had a strange feeling. She could definitely tell that she did not feel any bad energy from the heir of the library. His face seemed friendlier than the last time. His words and movements were calm and confident. In general, all the brothers seemed to her to be very good people. Suddenly they addressed her by calling her name. Yoon apologized, saying that he may have asked a question that was difficult to answer. But she, deep in thought, did not even hear anything. Han asked him why he was asking such difficult questions, and explained that few people understand such combat techniques. After a few hours of conversation, she would have clearly told him what he was asking. She explained that such techniques are not impossible. She recalled how her father had said that ancient texts described a method of reversing energy points. Yoon felt much more confident because the lady knew the answer. Laughing, she added that it was only a legend, so it was not certain that such a method really existed. After a short conversation with the brothers, the heir said that he did not want to see them here, and asked them to leave, and so they were left alone. She wondered what he wanted to know from her. Han's mind was going through his thoughts, noticing that she realized that he had not just kicked the brothers out, This did not surprise her, and she said that she wanted to put an end to this scandal, but she rarely left the library, so she did not know much about Somun's plans. He asked her to tell him everything she knew about the clan. When she finished, she thanked him for the warm welcome despite their unexpected visit. She and her father turned around and started to leave. The heir looked at them and asked for her opinion, but she did not understand what he was talking about. "He looks normal, but his laugh is very strange," her father said, repeating his laugh. Then he laughed and said that it seems that they don't even notice it here. Looking at the lonely moon shining in the night sky and beautifully illuminating the library, the heir was deep in thought. He thought that their opponent, the Somun clan, was one of the most respected clans with very strong warriors, but they would be no match for the great heavenly library. At least, he hoped so. But it wasn't enough to hope for this. He had to find the right moment. The steward was their living proof of the Somun clan's vanity, martial arts, and knowledge of the great heavenly library. He wanted to use Bomhan's talents and knowledge, as well as his experience as the former head of the Murim Alliance, as a weapon against the Somun clan. If you bring in someone else to help, it looks pretty good. But as for their warriors, that would be a problem. Meanwhile, during his evening musings, he was followed by his brothers and his shadow. Yun immediately realized that his brother was up to something and turned to the girl, asking if she, like his shadow, knew anything. He even assumed that it was Lady Ban, because since she had been visiting them, he had been alone all the time. At that moment, the girl flinched, and Yun immediately saw that something was wrong with her face. And at that moment, the brothers realized that two girls had fallen in love with him at once, and they were shouting that they wanted to do the same. She explained that she thought that the master was developing a plan to confront the Somun clan, but it seemed that he had other interests. This was her point of view. Already in her mind, she saw the following. She envisioned a late dinner and a mountain of goodies on the table, saying that it was always good to have a late dinner. The heir came around the corner and said that was very well said, suggesting that we eat to our heart's content tonight. He asked Yoon to come over to him, and the boys ran forward, discussing how hungry they were. He gave his brother 2 days to extend the protective barrier in the library beyond the cliff. When asked to explain, he said that it was nothing special. He just wanted to improve the protection just in case. The girl caught up with him, and they started walking together. He realized that it was time for her to go to bed because she was sobbing, and he said so. But she replied that she was his shadow, although she couldn't even say this word properly because of the yawning. After a while, he went to the building where the manager was and ordered him to be fired. He wanted to talk to him, and started a conversation about whether he had worked with the Somun clan and the Cheonwol sect to develop his plan. The manager explained that he had only spoken to the heir apparent of the Somun clan about it, and that he had told him to destroy the great heavenly library from within. After hearing this, he turned around and started to walk out, explaining that he had only asked this out of interest, and explained to the steward. He added that he was not up to anything at all, and the door closed behind him. After a while, he called his brothers. He thanked them for coming and invited them to sit down at the table, explaining that he would need their help. He told them that he had decided to write a letter, as recommended by the god who had dreamed of him that night. The boys were excited to hear the story and asked what he had told him. When they heard the words, "God told me," they could not wait to hear what he would say next. Then came the words, "Run," he said, "run." After shouting this, he disappeared, and the boys' emotions changed dramatically. Khan continued, saying that this god was definitely from the Somun clan. It may seem strange to run away from those who tried to destroy their library, but if that's what the god says, then they should obey, he told the boys. They had already caught the manager, using all possible tricks, but it was not easy to bring the Somun clan to light. Besides, if nothing was done, it could really lead to bloodshed. So he said that they would send a letter of reconciliation to end things without any fuss. His brothers were furious and started tearing up the paper, saying that sending a letter to the clan just because of some dream was ridiculous. They could not believe that he wanted to turn a blind eye to what the Somun clan was trying to do to their library. But he believed that the most important thing was to save their lives and his own and live a long time. The boys immediately pressed their noses to the table and apologized to him for their insolence. Xianghua, in her usual style, kicked down the door and came in. This time, the heir couldn't help but shout at her. She was holding a stick, and he did not understand why she needed it. Since he didn't need the stick, he asked her to clean the room and was ready to tell his side of the story. He began by saying that they would write a letter to the clan leader from the heir of the great heavenly library. I assume you may have been disturbed by the recent rumors about the Somun clan and the Cheonwol sect. The responsibility for the war lies with me, as I could not control the tongues of my subordinates, he said. He believed that this letter would be written in such a way as to humiliate them as much as possible and to elevate the Siomen clan. He realized that he was mistaken in thinking that it would be easy to deal with everyone, despite the fact that he had spread rumors about the caught manager who had given away all the plans. If they continue to flatter the Siomen clan in the letter, they will agree to end things quietly. Perhaps upon receiving this letter, the Siomen leader will send them a return invitation when the first condition is met. Suddenly, one of the guards appeared on a tree branch outside the window and said that there was a big problem. The manager had had a seizure, no one had touched him, and they didn't know what happened. Yoon was the first to jump up and ask how he could have had a seizure. This scenario was perfect for the heir, and he had a smile that spoke for itself. Last night, before Hugong went to the manager's office, he performed a curious technique, which made his body shrink for a few seconds, and he was able to quickly recover his energy, saving him time to sleep. If this technique worked, all he had to do was apply the secret technique. But if you think about it, it's strange that Yoon asked Gyo-in about it. He believed that some masters perform this technique by actively using it, but in reality, few people know how to apply it correctly. There is a reason why this secret technique remains unknown to the whole world. Perhaps the reason is that the person on whom the technique was applied does not know when exactly it happened. If you take full advantage of the secret technique, you can secretly take revenge on the Siomen clan, and to do it in a way that will make you more careful. To do this, you need to test this technique in advance. He went to the manager and forced him to untie his body. It was at that moment that he realized that the technique worked. Due to the time difference, the attack and action would start later, which would play into his hands, because no one would know about it, and then everything would be ready. Sitting at the table, he mentally said, "Wait for me, Siomen clan," and was ready to make them pay for their dirty tricks. Meanwhile, in northern Anhui, the Siomen clan was already reading the letter. The Siomen clan's strategist, White Brain, listened carefully to what was being read to him in the letter. He assumed that the Great Heavenly Library was very scared. The head of the Siomen clan, So Munchu, read the letter and continued that they wanted to meet with them and apologize for the terrible rumors. The head called his brother and asked him to review the letter and gave him responsibility for it. The heir to the Siomen clan read the letter carefully, listening to what he needed to do from his elder. He said that the first thing to do was to organize a warm welcome, and not to meet them on the street, but to invite them right inside. The authority of their clan would put pressure on them, so they would be more open. Then his brother asked if it would be better to organize a dinner party to invite the children of noble families. It would be easier to win the trust of the Great Heavenly Library if they thought that the Siomen clan was generous and magnanimous. Meanwhile, Grandpa was very nervous, clutching the letter in his hands. He was outraged at the way his heir was presenting their noble and respected family. The brothers also supported their grandfather, saying that these people were non-humans and assholes, and they were no different from wild animals. In addition, this letter was written by the heir, not the head of the clan. Their indignation knew no bounds. They expressed their opinions so emotionally that they even began to shake with anger. Meanwhile, Khan sat at the table and read the letter in silence. He was pleased that they had invited the children of the noble families, realizing that they were simply gathered to make them apologize in the presence of many people. But it was even better for them, because it would be much easier to use the secret technique in a crowd. While the grandfather and his grandchildren were crying because of the way the clan was treating them, the first heir sat quietly, which made them wonder why he didn't feel anything when he saw this response. But he didn't even know how to respond, seeing the senselessness of their emotions. He understood only one thing: he had to do something with them. After that, he screamed, saying that he was very angry at this letter, and explained that his calmness was due to the fact that if he started to get angry, he would break the whole room. He turned around and started to walk away, explaining that he was going to get some fresh air, asking us not to look for him. Everyone was even more upset, because it seemed to them that the eldest heir did not even have the strength to cry. When he went outside, he didn't know where to go, and he heard someone ask if he shouldn't go to the Siomen clan. This was asked by Xianghua, who was very worried about him, explaining that they had invited so many people just to humiliate him. He just asked her not to worry, saying that he had already thought about it. Then he chose the places to go. On the left was the most delicious pork, and on the right was the best fried food. He asked her what she would like to eat. Her eyes shone like stars, and she replied that she wanted fried shrimp the most. After that, she agreed to go eat pork. After a while, they were sitting at a table with delicious pork on it, and her heart was conquered by the fact that she was about to have a delicious meal. But again, a strong stench spread through the streets, causing everyone on the street to cover their noses. Meanwhile, they were sitting by the roadside and could not understand where the smell came from, because there was no sewage on the road. They noticed the air in the window and were angry that they were here on the roadside, forced to use the invisibility technique while he was eating meat in peace. But his brother grabbed him by the skins and told him that he had insulted him by calling them poor, and warned him that if he did it again, he would die by his hand. The younger brother believed that they now had a new family motto. If you want to die, just say the insult, and you will be killed immediately. At one point, the younger brother pointed to the window and asked to look out. He assumed that the heir was using a covert technique. He noticed that the heir was looking directly at him and smiling. Xianghua did not understand what the master was laughing at, and asked him about it. She looked at the point where he was looking and did not understand. Then he asked her to buy the most expensive bottle of alcohol in the restaurant on the way out. After a while, they were leaving, and she was holding a bottle of one of the most expensive wines. She couldn't understand why they bought it, because there were much better wines in the library. Suddenly she heard shouts of "Stop!" and they were surrounded by people. The poor man asked the heir to talk, and his younger brother stood next to him. He asked why they were looking at him, as if he wanted to say something, and then just walked into the room in silence. Xianghua asked them to calm down, called them beggars, and explained that they had misunderstood her master. The first time they met them, they interrupted her and asked her to be quiet. They asked for Mr. Bohm to speak. Bohm explained that his eyes were a different color than a blind man's and asked why he was looking at them and laughing. Bowing down, the heir asked them to forgive him for his gaze if it offended them. He was just curious, seeing two of their group for the first time. They were surprised that he could actually see them, because they believed they were invisible. They were sitting in a prominent place in the restaurant, but only he could see them. One of the poor men felt that he knew them, and their stealth technique had nothing to do with the great library of heaven. He came closer and began to sniff the boy, trying to find something familiar. He kept asking if they had met before. In fact, he had met them several times in his past life. Behind him, he saw Choi Un, a follower of the Discovery Squad. It was a memory from his past life. He asked him if he had anything to say, but he only suggested that they run a race and see who is faster. This seemed strange to the head of the Alliance, so he threw him to the floor and started kicking him in the face. It was hard to forget someone who had left such a strong impression, even if a lot of time had passed. At first it seemed that he was just another robber, but as a student of the Discovery Squad, he turned out to be quite talented and open to new things. Such a person could be of great help in the fight against the Soman clan. At this point, he suggested that they ignore the fact that they knew each other and said that he had prepared a bottle of delicious alcohol. He loved such acquaintances and immediately took the bottle of wine from the girl's hands. After that, they introduced themselves with the younger brother and asked why he only bought alcohol. Wasn't he rich? The guy explained that there was nothing worthwhile in it, and that was the only reason. This answer satisfied them, and they already considered him their brother. After that, he said that they would meet later. This was not possible now, because he had to prepare for a dinner with the Soman clan. The preparations were in full swing, and they were loading things. He asked her to take care of her brother, to be with him and not to leave him for a minute. However, it was a mistake to think that she would let a single hair fall from his head. In a moment, they were already sitting in the carriage, saying goodbye to everyone and waving goodbye to their brothers. The younger one, as always, was very nervous, and Yoon asked him to come back as soon as possible. A moment later, they watched the carriage drive away from them. Looking at the cart, the brothers discussed that they would be fine, hoping for the best. Yoon reassured the younger one, saying that his brother would cope with everything, no matter what. The letter in Yoon's hands was a sign that Yang was coming soon. When the younger brother heard Chu Yang's name, he was very happy. After all, he was the second son of the richest man in the world and his older brother's only best friend. Even when his older brother was very ill, he continued to correspond with him. He and his older brother had a very strong friendship, and they kept the secret of Chu Yang's arrival. They already thought that as soon as they dealt with the Soman clan, a good life would begin. Seo Munan was in a good mood and addressed his elder brother, asking about his mood. He complimented him, saying that he played a musical instrument very beautifully. However, the older brother refused the compliments, saying that his brother was exaggerating. It was his half-brother Pio Ryong. He was immersed in music with his whole body and mind. He thought about killing people who begged for mercy. He took possession of all the wealth and relics of all the families, and their estates were burning in flames. In his mind, it was a beautiful picture. His half-brother, listening to his words about his beautiful landscape, hoped that he would one day see this beautiful view. However, in his mind he saw a picture of his family being destroyed. He called him his older brother, but he didn't really know who his enemy was. This is what happens when you do not have power. The same can be said about the great library of heaven. They are known only for their books, but without power, They had no choice but to walk by and apologize, so he thought. A few minutes later, he was informed that guests had begun to arrive. He ordered his half-brother to play for the guests during dinner. He was glad that his half-brother realized that he was inferior to him. He thought that now it was the turn of the great heavenly library, and then Mr. Bohm got out of the carriage. Everyone greeted him, shouting that they had not seen him for a long time. He was most happy to see Lady Ban. The others were also happy to see him, and a fat guy ran up behind him and started hugging him. The lady explained that these were people he had never met before. They introduced themselves by saying their names. It was Mok Gun from the Ogu Society. He looked at each of them, analyzing them, but did not understand something. His biggest misunderstanding arose from the fact that they introduced themselves as being from the Cholgim unit. Hadn't he received a letter from them last year saying that their leader wanted to give him a sword? He had refused then because he already had 3 swords that he valued very much. He never thought he would meet someone from there in a place like this. The fat man ran around him and was surprised, saying that he looked different than he had imagined. He thought he would be a gloomy person with sad eyes, but he looked very happy. At that moment he realized that this fat man had no filter, but apparently he meant no harm. The man standing behind him said that the library had no shame or conscience, and everyone paid attention to him. He went on to ask, "Shouldn't Mr. Bomba be depressed? And now they've spread ridiculous rumors about the Soman clan." The lady turned to him and asked him why he would say such things in such a nice place. However, he did not see anything wrong with them. The heir approached the lady and asked her to calm down, saying that he could answer the man himself. He explained to him that this was not the right place for such conversations. The last straw that overflowed the cup of his patience was when Khan called him a dog. The lady was enjoying watching Han get mad. The fat man also started laughing and said that dog was just right. Mr. Soman appeared and invited everyone inside. Everyone greeted him, saying that it had been a long time. They all put on masks of friendliness and went inside. The librarian's heir apparent was next. He looked at Soman and saw only the bastard's eyes looking at him. This bastard was the heir of the Soman clan. Inside the room was extremely beautiful. On this idiot's face, you could see how much he admired the atmosphere and how confident he was in his plans. The heir was trying to figure out what kind of meanness this kid was up to. He thought that he would have to embarrass himself in front of everyone. But that didn't happen, because you don't throw parties for no reason. He asked for attention to this glass and the lady's empty glass. Waving the glass, he began to perform various tricks. Everyone was delighted when his wine poured right into the girl's empty glass. His skills were really impressive. Even the heir applauded him. But it was a bluff. It was insincere applause because he had simply transferred his energy into the girl's glass. What childish tricks. After that, everyone decided to show their skills. Someone sang, someone turned the glasses into fireworks, and this bastard even did a sword dance. Mok Gun just warmed up the wine. It was funny. The fat guy put on a show with invisible swords, and he wanted to show them the acupressure skills he had learned as a child in the library. This technique is called Humility of Heaven, because it is directly related to the divine touch. He approached the fat man and took him by the head. The fat man began to enjoy the touch of the air and told everyone that it was truly a heavenly pleasure. He added that thanks to Brother Bohm's hands, he felt reborn. The girls immediately ran to him, asking him to do it, and it seemed to them that he knew how to make things pleasant with his hands. They decided that the host of the dinner would be the first. He went to a chair, sat down, and told the heir that he could begin. But it was not so easy to crack this nut. Han never stopped thinking about what was really in this guy's head. He may act like he's up to no good, but Han had already achieved his goal and emerged victorious. And now he used a secret technique. The guy's face did not have the same expression as the fat man's, but he began to blush only after being asked to wait a bit. His half-brother could not believe what he was seeing, because it was the first time Soman showed emotions. He was very pleased with the massage given by the heir, but one of them came up with questions, because he suspected that he needed to stop. For a moment, the heir thought that he had revealed his secret techniques. The fat man was outraged that the successor walked over him 3 times, asking why he was paying so much attention to him. The heir asked him not to worry, and explained that he was only doing so because he had organized this dinner. This angered him, and he said that he would organize the next dinner. The girls laughed and joked, as they always do in all situations, both funny and not so funny. The evening was coming to an end, and some of the guests were leaving, saying that they would have the next dinner. When the guests left, he thought nothing had happened at the dinner, even though he thought Seo Moon had a plan. Anyway, he completed his mission and entered the carriage, telling Sung Hui that it was time for them to return. But before he left, Seo Moon wanted to talk to him. The two of them walked together, and Seo Moon asked how he enjoyed tonight's dinner. He said that he was glad that he liked the dinner, but he had something to say that he didn't want to discuss in front of everyone so as not to spoil the mood. The heir apparent realized that Seo Moon was about to show his true colors and interrupted him, saying that he also had something to say. He decided to speak first and asked for a steward to be sent to him. He asked if the steward shouldn't be punished for not fixing the damage to the Soman clan's reputation. He began to explain that they had tried to interrogate the steward, but it was difficult to get him to talk. They wanted to hand him over to the clan right away, but they were afraid that the manager would not be able to handle it. So I asked him not to delay and to solve this problem immediately. After some thought, he did not know how to respond, but he knew one thing. The steward was their only proof. He began to explain that they would really need to deal with the manager and the accusations against him. However, he remarked that he did not know that the Great Heavenly Library cared so much about his family's reputation. The heir apparent went on to say that as soon as the steward returned, he would be sent away and would be delivered within a few days. Seo Moon extended his hand to the heir and said that he wanted to start a real brotherly relationship after that, asking if he accepted the offer. It was really funny for Han, but he extended his hand to him, not holding back his smile. It was ridiculous that the one who tried to destroy the library was offering him a brotherhood. This only made Han laugh more, which caused a misunderstanding with the other man. Seo Moon didn't know how to continue the conversation, saying that he was in a hurry, and they would talk next time, when they had resolved the issue with the manager. He asked to just know that he was already like a brother to him. The heir thought about whether he should wait for the secret technique to work or kill him right now, and started laughing even louder. After a while, the carriage was traveling through the forest, smelling of horses, and smoke was rising behind the chariot. In the carriage, the girl was talking to the owner, discussing the day, praising him for a job well done and suggesting that they eat something tasty upon arrival. "That's a great idea. I'd like some too," the boy said, looking out from the roof of the carriage. She didn't understand who he was, but he said hello and told her his name was Jongjai. He was delighted to see Bom Han, asking if he was really who he seemed, and told her that his brothers had told him to follow him. Han explained that they were currently sleeping on the street. Jongjai added that it was his turn to sleep outside because they take turns sleeping outside. He asked me to tell his brothers that tonight he would sleep next to the Soman clan. The little boy wondered why, but the heir explained that a very interesting performance would unfold next to the Soman clan tonight. It was already nighttime outside, and it was dark. Seo Moon was lying in the hot water drinking alcohol. He was thinking about the clan from the mainland, the Cheonwol sect, the House of Fervent Loyalty, the Ogu Society, all of whom had given him this wine. He thought it was just an ordinary wine from the market. As he looked at the next gifts, he wondered what was there from the Cheolgim group. When he opened the box, he was surprised. There were as many as 12 needles in it. He immediately thought of giving them to his mom, because he knew she would like them. Besides, they had a pleasant scent. The Great Library of Heaven uses such a beautiful tree for a gift box. Was he really that eager to make a good impression? Seo Moon thought as he took the box from Han. He remembered the moment when he had asked him to be his friend and how confused he had been. He was sure that soon Bom Han would be playing his guzin like a tame dog and giving massages to his family members. Finally, he got to the gift from the library, and it was 3 books: Achieving Royal Transformation, 8 Ways to Desolate the Demon Beast, and The Magic of the 6 Sonnets and 9 Dragons. These were the books he thought of. They were empty. All the pages were white. What kind of tricks are the bastards in the library playing, he thought. And he was going to tell his father immediately. He hesitated to tell his father because the dinner had gone well. However, he thought that if they asked him to return the books, he would do so immediately. When he got out of the water, he began to take his first steps. Flipping through the book, he saw that these blank pages reflected all the evil he had done in his life. Blood began to flow from his nose. Then his head fell back, and he flew straight into the water. Splashes of water flew in all directions. The water changed its color to red, and terrible things began to happen to his body. He was writhing in pain. He could not bear this pain because his bones were broken. 5 minutes ago, he was resting here and enjoying the warm water. And now this water was colored with the color of his blood. His eyes were closing slowly and slowly. He only remembered his father before his life faded away, and he turned into a pile of useless meat. It turned out that his half-brother, a musician, was much more valuable than he was because now he wouldn't even be bought at the market. The eerie rounded room caused anxiety in everyone who entered it. No one could understand whether this guy had any enemies and what exactly happened to him. What had happened here? It could have been more than just the footprint of a saint. The oversaturation of internal energy indicated that someone was involved. Perhaps it was a master who knew about energy points and how to influence them. There was only one question left for everyone in the room. Who could have done this? The old man wondered why this man was not saying anything. He must know at least something to make a plan of further action. There could be many enemies, or there could be none. However, whoever it was, he left no trace. There was only one question left in the dark room. Who had caught the snake by the tail? The old man no longer had the authority to make any suggestions. He hoped that the master would be able to find out who it was. For now, he would stay in the Summon clan, trying to find the heir and help him. The man left, explaining his departure by preparing for the investigation. As he walked down the hall, he was horrified to realize that the person who had done this was not just a human being. Even with his knowledge, he could not guess who it could have been. Someone had pressed on the 7 points of energy. And what kind of technique is this that allows you to perform such unrealistic actions? No one performed any dangerous actions during the ceremony. There was only an official invitation to dinner, which went well and calmly. It was a secret technique, and there is a high probability that this was the case. In this case, the influence could have taken place in the morning or evening, or maybe even earlier. No one can know for sure. Whatever the level of skill, this person must have incredible strength. Looking at the mutilated body of the heir, his friend could not even imagine who could do such cruelty to him, let alone touch him. The guys on the roof waited for a long time for their brother, who had left and never returned. He had been missing for a long time. They were afraid that if their brother was caught, they might become the next targets, although the Summon clan was calm. But all this time, their brother had been listening and returned in anger when he heard words about himself. And yet, he found out that the library heir was right, and what happened was that the interest of the Summon clan's heir was torn to pieces, and there was not even a living place left. But how did he know all this? Did it matter, along with what had happened? The boys had to go to the library. The younger brother was all the time happy that they were going to the library. But it was wildly annoying his colleagues. They asked him to shut up. At one of the local recreational places, the friends tasted such good meat for the first time. And the meat, of course, was accompanied by a bottle of wine that they had tried last time. But why were they staring at them like that? Because the boys were quite hungry. They ate everything they saw. Despite all this, they had to watch their manners, because one of them was the great heir of the Heavenly Library. He is representing his family here, and given his position, he should be treated politely. One of them turned to this guy who was constantly escalating the situation. He may have lost his fear, but he only wanted to show them respect, and have them show him respect. He would not allow them to talk to his brother like that, and was going to teach them some manners by pulling out a weapon from his hidden pocket. Standing up to each other, an interesting situation broke out between them. The boy said, "Even if the young master is not afraid, he might be weak. If they bring booze, they will be able to see his mistake." But the librarian brother was about to teach them better manners than to bring them drink while brandishing their weapons in the middle of the dining room. The eldest brother suggested that the heir take a walk in the city at night, as it was good for the stomach. As they walked through the streets of Muramu, the man was interested in how he knew in advance what had happened to the heir to the Summon clan. But all he explained was that the stars told him. No one can verify that the stars can tell us anything. This man asked the heir to tell him one last time and promised that he would not tell anyone who had done it. The heir had only one answer, which was quite inaccurate. It must be someone strong enough to destroy the entire class. And why would he reveal his name now? Finding this moment, the vagrant decided to tease the heir. He said that the librarian could theoretically kill the heir. The librarian reacted to his phrase with a smile, which made some sense. If he said so, the heir to the library had prepared consequences for him. At this point, the vagrant disappears from his field of vision and commits irreparable acts on his part. And as the old man stands there, stunned, he thinks that the vagrant is innocent. But in fact, he possesses a force that can break bones without even touching the opponent. At this point, the man's rib cracks and he twists in pain. When the librarian asks him what happened to him, the man replies that it is nothing special. But he immediately realized that it was the librarian's handiwork. He could have killed without looking. And did he even get a reward for his actions? The librarian only smiled at his words, letting him know that everything was going according to plan. He only wanted to show the man something interesting and asked him to follow him. They came to a place where a man was sitting on a chair, tied up, with a guard next to him, making sure that the man did not escape. Judging by the situation, they had conspired with the Summon clan and were destroying the library from the inside. There were still a few people around him who had already been neutralized. Looking at this, the man realizes that the librarian had caught a big fish and knew about the Suman clan's plan. The old man tried to get to the bottom of it, but he couldn't. He assumed that the Suman clan was oppressing other families. But what was he going to do with all the trouble he had caused? The librarian had a plan. Tomorrow, he would invite the head of the Suman clan to his house. After the letters and gifts the young master received, he will have no choice. He will be crushed by a sense of duty. In the meantime, the young master is going to invite other people whom the old man knows well. The first stage of this plan needs to be started, and the town is enveloped in a mysterious silence. One of the servants brought the master a message that all the pages of the torn book had been reassembled. But what kind of book it was, the master wondered. After analyzing it, he realized that the book came from a large heavenly library, but unfortunately, all the pages were empty. At first, it seemed as if the library had decided to play a joke on him, but it went beyond that. His counselor realized that, given this information, it looked like a pathetic joke. In addition, a large chest and a letter were received, and most likely it was from the great heavenly library. The master ordered to open the letter slowly, which was in a large wooden box. His servants could hardly open the box, which was nailed shut. When they opened it, an incredible stench came out of the box. Everyone was amazed at what was inside. Apparently, these were the remains of one of the important masters, which had incredible consequences. Looking at it, it became scary to realize what had happened to the owner. It was a shock for everyone in the house. The leader of the Sumun clan wrote that the heavens had seen all their atrocities, and so he sent a curse on their heir on behalf of the heavenly premise. Reading this message, the owner was shocked by what it said. The library was not going to let the manager go. However, after a conversation, they sent the vice captain of security to take a look at the heir. In their opinion, even a fool like him would understand. This is the fate of your heir. This message was signed by the great heir of the heavenly library, who made it clear to his master that he was a real library bastard. Turning to his servants, the master ordered them to assemble a black squad and take immediate revenge on this man. That night, they would burn the library and wipe it off the face of the earth to eradicate evil from their lands. The warriors went on the attack, holding the cargo that was supposed to help them in this war. The army marched forward despite all the obstacles and thorny paths. Their master, seeing this place, was upset. Different emotions overwhelmed him. He was angry with the great heavenly library and was ready to retaliate against all the clans, especially the Suman clan. But out of the darkness, somewhere far away in the bushes, they heard an evil laugh that alerted their army. A fearless young librarian emerged from the fog, walking straight toward them. This was the same young master who had sent messages and gifts to these people, and they still did not slow down to threaten him. The clan leader did not need his meaningless talk, because this guy was responsible for what happened to his son. The young master only smiled at his answer and asked a controlling question. He can't be to blame for what happened. Maybe the clan leader himself is to blame. His attack, according to the heir, was just an attempt to take out his resentment on him. But the words of the clan leader only fueled the boy's desire to silence him, making sure that after that night he could no longer move his tongue. The young master flew like the wind in the air, illuminated by the night glow. He didn't like the fact that they had gathered tonight to destroy the library. He looked at the boys behind the clan leader. They called themselves the Black Squad. He invited them to come over to his side, because later they would regret not choosing the right path. The clan leader, seeing this, could not take it anymore. This fool would not be enough to avoid him. He pulls out his sword, wanting to show him what real hell is like. For the heir to the library, it didn't matter what the head of the clan said about himself. Although he said strong words, perhaps he didn't know that if he threw his words around like that, today he would feel the blade of the head of the Kaonwal sect, whose unbelievable appearance from nowhere had stunned all the warriors who were with the clan leader because they didn't know how to fight him. After a while, other clan leaders began to appear and condemned the leader of the Suman clan for coming here. They could not think that his attack would be real. They stood above him and condemned his actions, his wickedness. They were disappointed that they had gotten involved with him. By saying these words, they made him feel sad and want to destroy them all. Even the old man from the Suman clan, who was also supposed to be banished from the country, suddenly appeared here. The moment he was expelled, they seized power in the clan. How could this guy find him and bring him here? The heir's brother was amazed at his intelligence, because he used his request to bring all the people here. It was an incredibly wonderful plan, and the heir could not help but note that his brother had made a great effort. Looking at the leader of Suman, there was only one question. What would he do in this situation? After all, as they say, he has no loopholes. It would be better for him to make all these people kneel down and ask for forgiveness before it was too late. But the head of the clan, although surprised by this performance, considered it arrogant behavior. Did they really think he came to fight the library without a trick up his sleeve? He waved his sword, sending his soldiers forward, and ordered them to get ready to fire. The chapters who arrived for this battle were amazed that he was going to use weapons. But the clan leader did not care. They said that the great heavenly library was an impregnable fortress with an unpredictable strategy, but it will not withstand his attack because the power of this force is enough to destroy everything. Even one bomb can destroy everything here. The leader of Sumun is going to blow up this mountain, turning it into ashes. But are they really scared? The heir of the heavenly library clapped his hands after saying that. He thought so, and would have been disappointed if the clan leader had come empty-handed. But bombs are the best strategic maneuver, and the library will be happy to receive such a gift. The guy offers to continue the conversation after the clan leader loses and snaps his fingers. The leader does not understand why he is so confident. Suddenly, a strong earthquake breaks out, splitting the ground beneath them, and the warriors cannot stay put. Moreover, the mountain they were standing on begins to crumble into pieces, and the soldiers fall down one by one onto the rocks. They can't believe their eyes and wonder if this is an illusion. But it's really happening, and they are in mortal danger. The leader, seeing the confusion of his soldiers, realizes that this is not the end of the battle. He takes his sword to slow his fall. He crashes into a rock to stop his falling body. He tells his soldiers to stop and not to panic because it's all just an illusion. They just need to calm down, and he hears screams from above as his warrior starts to fall right on top of him. The clan leader realizes that if the warrior falls on him, it will be the end. He activates his strength to deflect the blow from above. The blow ricochets off the warrior, and he falls in the other direction. But this does not mean that the danger is over. Because of this senseless attack from the mountain, he loses his maneuverability, and his sword slides off the cliff. The clan leader continues to fall down, realizing that this could be his end. As he falls, he realizes that the ground is still far away, and that everything is still in order. Besides, the mountain on which the library stands is not really that high. If it were real, they would have crashed long ago. This proves that it is only an illusion. The leader proves it to himself. He asks the soldiers not to let themselves be deceived. In his opinion, this is magic, and they are just misleading them. The visiting leaders and high-ranking officials were amazed to see these soldiers and what was happening to them. These soldiers were just lying on the ground, and it was hard to look at them and describe this sight. They fell into an illusion. The heir of the heavenly library tried to expand the protective seals to the entire mountain. Even though the library was hidden by the illusion, it now covers the entire mountain. And these warriors, caught in the illusion, begin to die, imagining that they are crashing, and their bodies are crashing just like their illusion. They are confused and do not understand how to get out of this illusion. But the danger they feel is very real. Soon they start falling to the ground with such force that it feels like it's happening. The heads look on in shock, realizing that it is just an illusion, but the soldiers are dying from it. Can't this guy really get out of this illusion? The reason is that the human body and mind are one, and no matter what the illusion is, good or bad, they really believe that they are falling off a mountain inside that illusion. And the moment people take the illusion for reality, it can kill them because the impact materializes. After this spectacle and the incredible power of the illusion, all that remains is to collect their bodies. The high-ranking officials look at the heir to the library. He doesn't even hesitate in his decisions, and it no longer looked like he was defending himself against the Sumun clan. But the question remains, why did he invite them? In fact, it turns out that he only wanted to show what his true face and the face of his clan were capable of, and this incredible power terrified those who watched. One of the heads asked the heir an important question. There were already many bodies on the ground, but they were still alive at the moment. He asked to ease their suffering. And without a doubt, this was done on his part, because he could not leave them in a coma. As soon as the soldiers heard the order, they took cold steel and carried out the order of the heir over the stunned bodies. After this incident, one of the leaders felt uncomfortable, because after such a disgrace to his clan, he only wanted to hide. The leader of the Sumun clan was insidious and destroyed anyone who stood in his way. The elder thought that he only wanted to strengthen his clan, but he could not even imagine the destruction it would bring after he was expelled. His colleagues will not blame anyone, because if it were not for the heir to the library, they would have suffered from this man's cruelty. Judging by his actions, The leader of the Suman clan has probably committed many crimes that their society is not even aware of. They should be happy to be part of an influential political alliance, but they can only watch this shame. No matter how outraged the officials were, it was midnight, and everyone had to leave. The meeting was coming to an end, and on that note, everyone in the building went home to their respective properties. In order to defeat the Suman clan once and for all, they needed to recruit the best warriors from each school and family. First, they had to make a list of suitable people. Come to think of it, the heir recalls the time when he was the chairman. The assembly representatives were as boring as ever, but he still missed some of the people who were there at the time. He asks himself only one question. Should he go to the Murim Alliance? He's not ready yet, because he only knows 2 skills. Out of his 3 secret weapon techniques, he hasn't mastered only blood integrity, and the other 2 still need to be refined. Because of this, there is no rush. The heir was asked what he was thinking about at that moment. Looking around, he realized that they wanted to get his final approval, although he was sure they could have done it themselves. But since he was the leader of this plan and invited them here, he gave them the right to act on their own decision. They were all masters of their craft, so there would be no difficulties. But his brother was concerned about one thing. Why was he so calm? It seemed that he had faced similar events many times before. Is he really a genius? Looking at the simple guy, doubts arose. How could he deal with the clan so skillfully? This required experience. Where did he get it? But at the moment when they were about to announce the decision, someone abruptly opened the door. It was a messenger calling out to his older brother. Something incredible happened. The leader of Suman was in a frenzy. He did not look like himself. His eyes were burning red, and it seemed as if he had risen from the dead to take revenge for their atrocities. Everyone thought it was complete nonsense. People cannot resurrect, and we had to go and see what was going on. So the heir was asked by his brother what was going on. Only one thing could indicate what was happening: the awakening of a hidden power. The awakening of latent power is a martial technique used in times of extreme need. The warrior doubles or triples his strength by using the remaining energy. This technique allows you to muffle pain and accelerate the flow of blood through energy points. This is a great final trick for such vile people as the leader of the Suman clan. It might not be a good idea to go alone, so the heir orders the guards to raise the guard, ensure that the library is protected, and leave someone with his grandfather. Going outside, he sees that people are panicking. The situation was uncertain. At the moment when the carts with the bodies of the dead were piled up near the gate in the north, the body of the Suman clan leader shuddered, and then the same thing happened to the other bodies of the soldiers. Although the united warriors outnumbered them, the situation was not in their favor, for the enraged warriors had incredible strength with which to fight. Swords did not work on them, and steel did not help either, and the warriors were terrified and did not know what to do. All the attacks were repelled by the leader of the Suman clan, and his eyes glowed with devilish light. When the heir arrived at the scene of the fight, he saw a horrific scene. The leader of the Suman clan, furious, was killing innocent warriors because he had so much energy. It was clear that he could not just watch from the sidelines, so he had to summon the great warriors from the heavenly library. Although it is necessary to act, the warriors cannot defeat the enemy, because they are very strong. Then the heir has no choice, and he realizes that he will have to fight the leader of the Suman clan, because his strength is the only thing that can withstand the enemy. Looking at this whole performance created by the old man at his death, it will be difficult to defeat him. The awakening of the hidden power takes half an hour, and after that he will die. But during this half hour he can do a lot of harm, causing pain and suffering. One of the elders who was fighting with the leader hit him with a strong punch in the arm, but he was wounded. It is not clear why he realizes that this fight is not easy for him. If this dead man is fighting like a madman, then maybe something is wrong. If more dead soldiers are resurrected, the situation on the battlefield will become even worse, because the elder has lost his weapon. He was ready to say goodbye to his life, and the moment he tensed up, someone saved him with an incredibly strong blow that tore the warrior apart. It was the heir to the library who stopped the attack on the elder with his technique. The situation was out of control, so the heir entered the battle because he needed to save as many people as possible. He didn't have his sword or other weapons nearby, so he decides to borrow the elder's sword. Taking it, he quickly rushes forward to fulfill his task. He needs to deal with it all quickly. The main goal was to destroy the place where all the energy accumulated in this rascal converges. Running across the battlefield at high speed, our hero destroys the energy centers. They are like streams coming out of the warriors and putting an end to them forever. Having run across the battlefield and neutralized many warriors, the heir to the library moved forward, no matter what, and reached the very epicenter of all the disagreements. When the leader saw this, he was amazed because this rascal was going to fight him personally. He wanted to see what this young man was capable of before he died. At the moment they clashed, there was a huge explosion that blinded everyone, demonstrating incredible strength. The officials even began to worry about the heir, because a strong blow could have killed him. But he managed to block the blow and dispel Sumun's spell. He ran forward to neutralize the villain, and, as if in a dance of battle, the heir to the library spun around and used his sword, which carried piety, to pierce the defense. The leader of the Suman clan realizes that the powerful blow did not even hit the boy, and this made it clear that he was finished, because the sword skillfully cuts into his body, taking away his last energy. The villain was punished, getting what he deserved. Falling to the ground, the leader was powerless, and the whole root of evil lay motionless. No one knew how he had done it, but they were no longer going to believe the rumors about him. Although everyone knew that this man was a martial artist, they could not even imagine how strong he was. Since the leader would not return and had fallen at his hands, the soldiers of the heir apparent could not contain their joy because they saw great potential in him. His sword skills and movements were unsurpassed, unlike any other in the Heavenly Library, and the rumors that he was an incredible warrior were justified. Everyone was delighted and expected incredible results from this young man. No one was going to sleep or put things off any longer. They had to get together and finally destroy the Suman clan. This building, which symbolized the root of evil, would put an end to all atrocities. Fire broke out at the scene, and only sounds were heard. People even thought that families from the northern lands had invaded. At that moment, near the box with unknown contents, a man who had come to visit the massive things told him that the leader had gone to the great heavenly library to avenge him. But most likely, he lost, and some warriors escaped and got to him. This mass of moisture did not want to exist in this form anymore. It asked its father for only one thing, that he leave it this opportunity. In its formless state, it now looked like wine without a bottle. He has no father, and if the library comes, he will not get better. So he asks his shapeless brother not to give up his life. After all, something good has finally happened, and he is not a good judge of character. His brother looks at him with tears in his eyes and asks him how he must feel like a nobody looking at him. He couldn't stop laughing when he saw his condition. This sublimated mass was in shock and angry at this man who was just mocking him. His brother promised him that he would not worry, because for his own pleasure he would take care of him for the rest of his life. He promises him that they will live together for a long time in this world, and picks him up. The day after the attack on the Suman clan, at noon in the central building, the news came that the Suman clan army had been completely destroyed and shattered. When the great heavenly library learned of this, a festive mood prevailed there. Everyone shed tears of happiness, laughed and sang. It was a grand event that raised the mood and made it clear that one of the enemies was defeated. But a few days later, a messenger from Suman Bon arrived at the library. He brought the treasures stolen by the Suman clan from the heavenly library, as well as gold bars with an engraved apology on them. After that, an investigation revealed that the Suman clan had destroyed at least 5 families and clans. The elder changed in front of all these people and promised to help them rebuild. Talking to him, the heir realizes that he will have to pay for all the crimes committed by the former clan leader for about 10 years, and how strong the elder's sense of responsibility is. The next day, the head of the Continental Military Administration arrived. He brought a small wooden box as an apology for wanting to marry a person from the Suman clan. He had heard that they had recently been looking for a healing plant, not knowing whether it would be suitable or not. He brought the soul power flower. If someone takes it, after a while, the heir felt the effect of this flower. His face changed, and no one could wake him up. After taking the snake's blood, he could not find the rest of the ingredients for a long time, and did not know if he could get them at all. But this man made his efforts easier by bringing the necessary ingredient right into his hands. The man thought that the gift was not suitable for the heir, and he started to close the box. But the heir snatched it out of his hands, because it was the best gift, and he was very grateful for it. After that, the heads of the White House and the House of Fiery Loyalty came to see him. Their alternate visits annoyed our hero, because they could have come all at once. The head of the White House told him that the head of the Cheonvolta sect was not ready with a gift, so he could not come. But what kind of gift could it be that he had been preparing for so long? Jen Ying suggested that they go together to the Great Heavenly Library, because all the other clans were also paying their visits, and they should visit them. The beautiful girl did not understand why they could go without a gift. But the elder said that the gift was already completely ready. One of these gifts would be hers, because she had to be married to the heir to the library. They need to take into account the status and relationship with the heir to the library, because the more they know about him, the better. But it was quite abrupt, and the girl began to run away from her father in terror. Sometime later, at night, beggars came empty-handed. They always appeared when they wanted to eat. One could not expect much good from them, because they just ate meat and rested. After their visit, the heir thought that the flow of guests would end, but the captain of the Cholgam squad came with his son, Tan Kong Mu, to pay his respects. They hadn't seen Brother Bom for a long time, and it seemed that his father talked about him a lot at the dinners. They had been very quiet, but now they spoke to him as if he were a close friend. They brought him 3 chests of swords as a gift, because they knew that the heir did not have a sword. Each chest had 3 options, so that he could choose at least one. In his past life, our hero received a letter from the captain saying that he wanted to give him a sword. Now he received it in another life. Taking the first straight sword, it shone and glittered in the sun. The blade was perfectly crafted, and the weight distribution was just perfect. Thanks to the hilt, when the sword was lifted, the weight changed by 70% and then by 50%. This allowed the weight to be distributed so evenly that one could only admire it. The only thing better than flattery was their sincere words of joy that he appreciated their work. But there were other swords. The next sword, for example, was less harmonious, but it combined lightness and hardness. In the flow of energy, it also became flexible, so it was convenient to use it in various combat techniques. This sword emphasized skill, and every warrior would want to own such a sword. The owner had no doubt that all the swords were excellent, but the third sword was the real cherry on top. When our hero opened this chest, he was quite surprised. The third sword looked flawless, even though it was quite old. No one thought it would turn out like this, but when the guy looked closer, he noticed a very strange feature of this sword. Its aura stood out from the other swords, and it seemed as if he had seen this sword somewhere before. The boy looked at the sword for a long time, especially the engraving on it. He wondered how this sword could impress others. The elder asked the master what he thought of it. The master expressed that all the swords were beautiful, and he liked them all. The elder was even a little worried, because he did not want to give all the swords at once, and he had to choose one. He showed the boy the swords again and gave him a chance to choose. Although all of them were beautiful, the boy decided to take the first sword if the elder did not mind. When he looked at the sword, he even felt sorry for choosing it. But he explained that all of the swords were great, but the first one suited him better than the others, and it was the perfect sword for him. Looking at it, the boy realizes that the craftsmen had been working on this sword all their lives. He can't just take it away. He asked to find another owner or to pass it on as an inheritance. The elder understood this perfectly well, but how did the boy realize all this? How could he do it? Explaining his point of view, the heir said that next to this sword, any other sword would lose its value. All its wonderful properties would be revealed only in the hands of the one who created it. In the hands of the elder, this blade became so sharp that it could destroy anything. The edges of the sword were so skillfully crafted that they could multiply energy flows. Moreover, the runes on the sword were arranged in such a way that they harmonized all the energy, making it mobile. The use of the sword not only increased strength, but also improved the warrior's skills. The heir could not express his gratitude in words. He was amazed by the work of the craftsman, and therefore could not accept the sword. The elder was surprised by the boy's thoughts, because it felt as if he himself had participated in the creation of this sword. This sword was created for the best person in the whole world, and perhaps it has a whole story. This master forged it to be as good as the 3 swords already owned by Hongo, because he was already dead. But could this mean that the sword should be owned by another person? Given all these facts, the elder asks the boy to take the sword. After all, he is the only heir worthy of this sword, and he will be able to conquer the whole world with it. He can't wait to see how it will reveal its potential in his hands. Perhaps the moment will come when he will take this sword and do a good deed. But this moment may not come, because the heir is busy with science. Holding it in his hands, he will definitely be able to move to a new level. In this case, this sword could find its true owner. Do such coincidences ever happen? Looking at the sword, the boy realizes that this is an amazing connection. He is very grateful to the elder for this huge gift, because he is the real captain of the Cholgam squad. Shortly after the captain's visit, he met up with Yoon and Bumun and went to the Hook. They discussed the moment of the captain's gift, and they didn't like all these gifts. Soon, the head of the library was deciding what to do with those who had participated in the conspiracy between the Sumun clan and the manager. At first, they did not want to simply expel those who did not want to participate in the conspiracy and were guided by fear. At the suggestion of the head of the White House, he sent a request to invite the library to the Anju North Union, and it finally happened. They thought they could not see beyond their own noses. Our hero thought so too, but he died before he could give the Union the new strength it needed. They are thinking about the death of the heir, and it seems that the end of the clan's thief has finally come. Probably, the ties of this clan were much wider, which is why they faced the aggression of the allies. They will not take drastic actions and put themselves in danger. In addition, the Suman clan had plans to seize power, which they kept secret. If they formed an alliance, they would be able to counteract these plans. Moreover, the library has always supported the alliance. Why wouldn't they take control of the area around the library? Even if someone attacks, they will be able to repel that attack. At the same time, they could use runes to protect their territory. It wasn't a bad idea, and one of the elders would definitely bring it to the alliance. They hoped that starting today their family would become the best in the whole world. If this is true, then there are rumors that the heir to the library defeated the Suman clan. Given this, the library becomes a mysterious place. Some people think it's nonsense. How can he be a martial arts master if he just reads books? But there is no smoke without fire. They played a big role in that battle, and that's why there are such rumors. So why did the heir to the library, who was considered dead, suddenly become so active? One of the Muramu representatives wonders about this. But why did everything change so quickly? And is it better to stop discussing it? But what do they have to worry about? Given all this, wouldn't it be better to check on this librarian and kill him? It all depends on the will of the Lord. As he commands, so it will be. A man who blames himself for having to do something but not doing it feels guilty. But how can you judge a person you don't know? There is nothing left. The ruler will have to show what he knows. He received a letter from his friend, and it was a farewell letter. Today is a really beautiful day. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming, and this message looked like a joke. But if you looked closely at the first 6 letters, you could see that it was an encrypted correspondence between the head and Bomhan. The letter read in black and white, Chi Yang, I am alive, but it seems that I am dead. As long as I am alive, my family has to deal with sadness and darkness. As soon as I am gone, this sadness around me will stop. He gave me hope, and so I ask you, when he asks to meet, to let him know that the person involved must remain a secret. No one must know of his death. His passing must remain a secret. But why did he write this? Perhaps he is in such a state now, and perhaps he should say that he changed his mind earlier. But still, we will have to entrust a reliable organizer. They promised that they would not stop until the task is completed. But looking at the master, there was only one question. When he also dies, everything will be over. But he would not be able to live if he killed his friend. His death was a long-awaited and deserved price for the library. His advisors said that the man was a little out of his mind. He replied that it was a bright sunny day and the sun had not yet set. Therefore, he and the heir to the library would die on this beautiful day. The friends gathered in a restaurant, which was their most desired place. They were eager to find out how delicious the new dishes would be. It had been a long time since they had been to such a wonderful place together, and they couldn't wait to try the dishes. Their joy knew no bounds. Today, they will try dishes they will never forget. But the heir, looking at this young man, noticed that he was too confident. A few days ago, he started asking his young master to go to this restaurant with him. Could this dish really be that good? But one way or another, it probably wasn't. The guy didn't even eat breakfast, excited about the upcoming pleasure. Looking ahead, they could see the direction they were headed. Along the way, they came across wooden toys for sale. The brothers looked at these toys and remembered how they used to play with them as children. They were very similar. But the heir wanted these silly thoughts to go away, because they shouldn't be distracted. But they were so engrossed in these toys that they didn't even hear his words. The heir took the girl with him so that they could at least go and take a table. But the girl quickly refused him, emphasizing that it was better to go get the owners, and she would bring them in a moment. She ran away from him screaming, "Gentlemen, wait for me!" Together, like young children, they began to play with these simple, wonderful toys. Looking at them, the heir did not understand what to do with these children. But shortly after she stayed with her brothers, he felt an incredible sensation. Somewhere nearby, he felt a terrible urge to kill. Looking around, he couldn't understand where it could be coming from, or who would dare to do it. Looking closer, he saw an old woman walking down the street. Could it be her? But when he activated his technique, he realized that it was not an old woman, because this incredible abomination was only pretending to be one. The steps of this old woman were uneven, but it was natural. Although at first glance only her spine was visible, her muscles were not weakened by old age. Her teeth were visible from her pursed lips, and it was clear that she was not an elderly person. She was a middle-aged woman who was only pretending to be old. Even after they met with the ice, she did not go the other way. At this rate, when she passes by, the illusion may disappear. Could it be the assassin sent by the Suman clan? If not him, then who is it? Perhaps the librarian invited him to the great heavenly library. Although he didn't get a proper response, it doesn't mean that he went to such drastic measures, realizing that the person who sent it could be dealt with later. The most important thing now was to eliminate the threat. Looking around, he realizes that it's not just this old woman who is trying to kill him. The skinny, middle-aged guy next to her is also about to do it, and even the guy standing behind him picking his nose are all agents sent to kill him. Although he thought he had eliminated all the warriors capable of doing this, someone sent new ones. But where they came from remains a mystery. At the moment when his friends were playing with toys, the young master decided to check what they could do. In front of his friends, the young master jumps on one of the enemies. They are shocked, explaining that they were just distracted for a moment. He began to strangle an old woman who he believed had terrible intentions. Soon after, he jumped on the second killer, who was just getting in the way. His friends did not really understand why he attacked her, but the moment they ran up to the old woman, they realized that she was already dead and it was too late to help. When they looked closer, they saw that it was just a mask, and that someone else was hiding under the mask. The young master took all these murderers by surprise. They were amazed that the descriptions they had been given did not match reality. But one of them still accepted the fight and blocked his blow. They had been told when they went on the mission that the heir to the library dreams of death. But why is he attacking them? Moreover, he uses a martial art. The heir breaks through the defense of this scoundrel and hits him with a strong punch right in the face. But if not for his brother, who warned him that he was being attacked from the outside, he would not have noticed. Two huge men with swords were flying straight towards him, over his head. Using magic, he was able to block their blows and throw them aside. Moreover, he was able to turn their weapons against them. They could not hold him and got what they deserved. The daggers destroyed them, and the master's sword did its good. One of the attackers looked at this and thought what a nightmare it was, because their plan was collapsing before their eyes. He wanted to stop this outrage and did not understand what the truth was, but the young master's rage was unrelenting, and he was not going to stop or leave them alone. All his countermeasures and techniques were useless against this magician, but still he had nothing left to defend himself. Pulling out his sword, the man began to swing it, repelling one attack after another. But as soon as the master activated his superpower, he was able to hit all the attack points of the villain. Soon his body was in pain, and he didn't understand what was happening and why his plan didn't work. Even though the young master had activated and attacked all the blood points, a small dagger that looked like a needle stabbed him in the neck. This only meant that the task was completed for this killer. After these words, he fell down and was never able to speak again. The heir to the library realized that this was a sneak attack. Even though he acted after the blood of the hexagonal serpent, he still missed the hidden attack of this rascal. The killer's task was still not accomplished. He pulled the needle out of his neck, and his friends ran to his aid. They wondered if their brother was okay, and why all these people came for him. Had he been wounded in the battle? The heir, looking at them, suspected that perhaps they had arranged it. But they assured him that they knew nothing about it. But the fact was that they had been persuading the heir to go to the city together for several days. And how could they explain how the cards had coincided? These words confused them. It was not like that at all, and they knew nothing about it. Since Chuyang was somewhere nearby in the city, and they hadn't told him anything, the heir sent him a letter right away, and now he received a reply from him. He wanted to surprise them, so he asked them to take the heir out to eat so that he would not suspect anything. Hearing these words, the heir could only be angry. But using his technique, the young master realized where the real root of the evil was. It was the guy who was watching all this, and he realized that he had survived after all. He felt funny that his plan had failed, and that the heir to the library had survived after many strong blows. Bomhan, who had lived only because he could not die, now had to fight to survive. Looking at this, the master burst into tears, addressing his servant. Could he believe that his friend was killing people to save his life? But the man only wondered what was so disturbing. How could he have just killed 15 people and now give this scoundrel a whole city of ghosts? The point is that Mr. Chun shouldn't waste any time. because now is not the time to be so touched. This dude is attacking right at them. They need to run. But where the hell did the guy who wants to die come from? It was better to double-check all the information. The boy welcomed his friend Bombcon with open arms and asked him to approach him carefully. But the young master was serious when he went upstairs. He flew up to the 6th floor to deal with the rascal. It was clear that he was not going to meet the scoundrel with a warm embrace. With a strong blow to the head, he slaps this rascal for his intentions to kill him. With tears in his eyes, this man falls to the ground. He was really glad that his dear friend Bomhan had become so energetic again, and he was amazed at his enthusiasm. A powerful punch knocked the rascal off his feet. Our hero did not hold back, because the situation had long since gone beyond the limits of adequacy. This blow sent the guy flying across the room and crashing into the wall, scattering furniture and things into small pieces, creating chaos. The heir to the library decided to talk to this guy. After all, there is a limit to any nonsense, and before sending a letter, he wanted to make sure he was acting correctly, and that there was at least a drop of sanity in this curious young man. The assistant began to stop his master because he had long ceased to be adequate. But when the boy began to stare at the man, Manbak-chan became nervous, not understanding why he was being looked at like that. This man, Manbak-chan, is known for being able to deal with anyone if you pay him enough money. In his past life, our hero hired him to get the information he needed. But of course, he didn't pay him. Was he the one who hired the killers? Our hero was quiet in the room, and Manbak-chan explained his position, saying that he was just doing his duty. He realizes that the task of killing the heir is insane, but that's what the letter said. The situation was becoming increasingly unclear. Who is to blame for this chaos? Why did this man decide to kill the heir? The war started with Bomb-Khan, and the guy hopes that this nightmare will end here and now. After a while, the heir brought the boy to his father for correctional labor. The father beat him severely, trying to prevent him from going mad. His child's correspondence revealed a murder plot. The father thought his child had finally decided to live in peace, but he was wrong. He had to keep his grandfather to himself, because he could break the face of anyone who disagreed with him. The grandfather felt responsible and could not contain his emotions. The situation could have ended very badly, with serious consequences. He almost lost not only Bomhan, but also Chu Yan, whom he loved as his own grandson. After he scolded Chu Yan, he still hugged him. Despite the difficult times, his eldest grandson would be fine now. With only brighter days ahead, Chu Yang turned to his mentor and accepted his words as his reality. The heir watched all this and sighed with relief. After a while, night fell and the city was enveloped in silence. Chu Yang, talking to his partner Bomhan, decided to break the contract and was glad that everything had been resolved without any problems. But the fact is that Bomhan, no matter how much he tried to explain to the young master, was not understood. The problem remained unresolved, and sitting down at the table, he decided to make his point. If the young master carries out the murder, it will be an assignment of the limitless killer. This means that they will go all the way, because their organization and their martial art are famous for their brutality and determination. Of course, they are martial artists, their skills are unsurpassed, and the special thing is that they never give up. This lets him know that the danger his brother faces will continue. Mr. Chu asks them to terminate the contract, but it is not possible. Given the circumstances, no one can cancel their contract. The young master has to cancel this stupid idea, and offers to pay them double the price, and, of course, to thank them. However, this will not work either. Could the young master really have lost his status? Money is not everything. They are even ready to satisfy the desire to die with money. But is there really no way out of this situation? Perhaps there is a loophole. However, no matter how hard this man tries, he cannot explain to the young master that there is no way out of this situation. To be more precise, he has two options. In the first case, Bomb-Khan is dead, and in the second case, all the members of the assassination organization are dead. But even after all the leaders are dead, there will still be a second leader. Young Mr. Chu, waving his wind machine, says that this is not a problem. But what is he going to do if the end comes after everyone involved in this organization is killed? They will undoubtedly do so, and they are going to hire a second group of assassins for this task. Hearing this absurdity, the man hoped that young Mr. Chu was just joking and that his words were not serious. But nevertheless, he orders to find the best martial artists, pay them double the amount, and assemble a so-called death squad that will watch over his brother until the assassins are destroyed. Looking at the young gentleman, his words seemed like complete nonsense. But as long as he has the money, nothing is unrealistic, and the man takes on the task, starting to look for warriors for a squad to fulfill the young master's request this time. It is important to keep this a secret from his brother. But why does it have to be a secret? Perhaps Mr. Chu is exaggerating, but the point is that one must not overstep the mark. They will take care of Mr. Bomhan. Looking at the young master, he changed beyond recognition. All this time he wanted to die. Each time he was ready to die, but suddenly he found a desire to live. Now he had to fulfill his plan, because money is money. It was necessary to start the task immediately, because they did not know when the assassins might decide to attack Bomkan again. They had to act quickly. The next day, everyone gathered in the building to say goodbye to the owner. The heir asked him to take his time and stay for a while longer, but he explained his reason for leaving by saying that he had many things to do. Now that they can meet whenever they want, he can come back here at any time. Although this is good, why is he needed here now? The chariot was ready to leave, and all that was left was to wish them a happy and safe journey. Everyone waved goodbye, and the heir was glad that they had finally left. Now it was his time. He called his brother, Boom Bomon, because he had to talk to him. Let him come to my chambers. They didn't understand what had happened and asked Sung Hua if she knew what was going on. She crossed her arms and replied that she knew exactly what was going to happen. They would get their asses kicked, no matter what their intentions were. The owner almost died this time, so they need to go faster. However, Sung Hua has also been helping them, and it would be nice if she got a kick out of it too. But they had to hurry up to avoid being punished for being late. The young master sat in his room and looked at the artifact that had been brought to him. Looking at the flower, he realizes that he may have to accept it at some point. The flower of soul power may be needed even now because the thirst to increase his strength was just incredible. He needs to reach the state of blood integrity as soon as possible and return to the previous level he had. Although he had not gained immunity to poisons by drinking the blood of that stinking snake, he was able to neutralize the poison at the last moment of the assassin's attack. But if he hadn't made it in time, he would have been in big trouble because he couldn't have stopped them so easily. Now he needs to prepare for a strong opponent to survive. At this point, when the boys came in, the heir began the conversation by saying that it seems that his grandfather had sent letters to friends who might know where to get poisonous beetles and hoped to get good news. He told his brothers to come in and sit down. These words gave them a bad feeling. The heir looked at them and realized that they were frightened. From today, he will start taking the flower of power and soul. So he needs to stay in his chambers for a while. Because of this, Yoon will be taking care of the family for the next month, as if he were the head. This includes negotiating with other clans and sects, as well as managing the protection of the library. Yoon reacted to this very impulsively, but, in the young master's opinion, his grandfather is already quite old, and his uncle is not very active. Would he be able to fulfill his duties? The heir trusts him because he knows he can do it. Yoon thought that they were going to make him a naggin, but he didn't even know that the young master had a good opinion of him. He pulls himself together and promises his brother that he will do his best not to let their family down. If it comes to magic seals, they will need to ask for Buman's help, because he is well versed in them. If something unusual happens, they can ask him for advice. Feeling the enthusiasm in his words, the boys will no doubt take on the house. Now it's time to get down to business, and the young master calls out to Sung Hua, who comes out with a huge stick in her hand. The young master is glad that he can rely on them, but he mustn't forget what needs to be done. He was going to just let them go, but he sees that they realize that since they are wearing so many clothes and their brother is holding a stick, he is going to beat them for hiding information. The heir to the library started to give his brothers whippings, and it was funny to see how they relied only on their clothes to wait for the whipping. After he gave these scoundrels their whippings, they lay on the floor, beaten. The young master appealed to the guards. Since the conditions for using the flower are the same as for the hexagonal serpent, he would meditate in his chambers for a while. He asked if they would like to lock themselves in the chambers with him, because they had to accompany him and were very worried about him. The soldiers explained that they were not that worried about him and did not want to spend all that time in his chambers. Then the young master turned to Sanghua. He believes in her loyalty, but she has never been loyal to him and is not going to change her mind now. Looking at the people around him, the heir realizes that they were no longer reliable at all and did not want to be locked in the chambers with him. They could not even imagine this. If they used to leave him unattended, it meant that they were even pushing him to his death, which was no different from murder. After all, to think that before they were protecting Khan, not from murderers, but from suicide. Since no one was going to go with him, the young master takes the Krina into his own hands. He says goodbye to everyone, promising to see them in a month, and wishes them to see him soon, continuing his mission. Time passed quickly, and soon it started to snow, and with it, it has been 20 days since the heir took the flower of soul power. His chi energy began to grow much faster, and now he could fully control the functioning of his internal organs, blood vessels, and even every nerve ending. All this gave him unlimited possibilities and great potential for further development. All these limitations that the young master had to overcome were worth it to become the best. His abilities quickly reached the level of the 3rd star, and his fortitude grew stronger. The more he improved, the better he felt about his old self. Finally, he refined 2 defenses: Whole Blood, Illusion Cloud, and Penetrating Strike. Whole Blood allows you to control blood vessels, and now the effect of this skill lasts much longer. The Cloud of Illusion technique has become much more accurate. Now he can control the force of the blow, and the Penetrating Blow allows the force of the blow to pass through the opponent's body. If we take a punch on a plank as an example, then thanks to a penetrating punch, the lower planks will break, while the upper one will remain intact. Thanks to a penetrating blow, all the force is transferred to other objects. It can be the ground, objects, or other people. Since impacting the energy point is not always effective, sometimes you have to use your fists. This can be useful for defending yourself in close combat after several enemies. Although these 2 of the 3 basic means of self-defense are now sufficient, he was looking forward to using the last method, the poison beetle. And now it was time to move on to the next stage. The young master took the sword and looked at its shiny form. It was in perfect condition. This sword looked great in the collection with his 3 legendary swords. Looking at it, he felt that this sword was really meant to be his. The seals on it covered the entire sword. Although it came to the young master late, the master had put his heart and soul into it. This made the wait worthwhile. The young master needs to regain his old swordsmanship skills in order for the sword to unleash its full power. He is glad that this sword appeared in his life at this very moment. His previous sword, which he had in his previous life, he could not return. But now he can use this one, and in some ways it is even better. As he skillfully maneuvered it, he realized that he needed to name it something. He came up with a great name for it: Rensduka. If he had not met such a wonderful sword after his rebirth, he would not have been able to do incredible things. The boy stepped away from the sword and asked Ren to follow him. As he walked forward, he realized that nothing was happening. He looked back and saw that the sword was in the same place. He called out to the sword to come to him, but nothing happened. Our hero waited for a while, but the sword stood there like a rock and did not react. The young master began to get angry, promising that this would be the end of it if the sword did not listen to him from the beginning. Why is it not responding and ignoring him? After stopping and calming down, the boy thought that maybe the sword was shy. It was okay. They would spend a few more days together and get used to each other. But even after several days, even after 10 days, the sword still did not respond. And the young master was tormented by the thought. They had already spent 10 days together, and the damn sword did not come to him. It would be great if it finally started to respond. But this magnificent engraved sword turned out to be a piece of trash. The heir to the library, realizing that this is the case, nevertheless returns back to his world. The grandfather sent letters to everyone, and among those to whom he sent them, some of them received a response faster. If you read the letter he gives to the young master, these people did not send the beetle, but instead invited him to come to them personally for some unknown reason. The letter read, "The library, the poisonous beetle you need is in the possession of the main fortress of the healer. They do not need money. If the heir to the great library needs this beetle, then let him come and take it personally." Realizing this, the young master was glad that they had the beetle. That was all that was interesting in that envelope. The old man sighed a heavy sigh, even though he assumed that for any treasure they asked for, they would exchange everything for the beetle, but no one agreed. Apparently, there were no hidden offers or open requests in the letter, and they didn't need the money. Perhaps they had a problem and hoped that the young owner would be able to solve it. So in any case, there is no need to worry. The guy will go there and ask for a beetle. But how can you go without knowing what they want from you, wondered the grandfather. He suggested giving up because the idea was bad. The old man was worried that something would happen to the boy. But in any case, he couldn't be convinced, so he had to be careful. So the young gentleman set off. He still had to meet the guest. Arriving at the room where the guest was waiting for him, the young master greeted the man who had been waiting for him for a long time. This man was glad to meet him, and had heard a lot about the young master's lively character. The man's name was Mo Yen Mon, and he was the head of Murim in Anhui province. In his previous life, the young man had seen him often and met him several times at the annual meeting. He was always smiling and at ease, and because he was always smiling and was a very kind person, he was nicknamed Sword He. Mo Eun-myung could not believe his eyes that he had managed to meet such a famous young man. When asked if he had really become famous, the young gentleman did not know anything, but the fact was that everyone in Anhui was talking about him. Instead of being shocked by the true face of the Samoon clan, they were approving of the heir to the great heavenly library. And as soon as the boy pulled himself together, he turned everything upside down. Hearing these words, the young master thought they were quite funny, saying that Rim came to his senses when he turned upside down. Mo Youngmon did not understand his joke at first, but as usual, he laughed because it was accurately observed. He realized that he had made such a terrible mistake, and that was why he had come to quit. He was wondering what had happened, and while he was distracted, riots broke out in the south of the province. Strange people suddenly appeared and began to rob. While he was trying to sort things out, he started to get a headache. One of these factions has so much power that all the clans started making noise about it. Besides, they always blow up at night and attack by surprise, and praying for mercy doesn't help. His thousands of guards were simply shocked, and the young master could not believe that this was happening. He did not understand why they were attacking then. Although the young master had nothing to do with these attacks, the old man asked if these factions belonged to him. These words were quite shocking for the young man. He hoped that he had misheard the old man, but he understood everything correctly. That was the reason he had come, he thought. But the fact was that the man had also come to offer him the chance to become a Murim warrior for his talents. It was just awful. The head of his alliance had recently wanted to make him a private soldier. Seeing the horror on the boy's face, the head of the Murim began to explain that not everyone can join their troops, but they could not pass up such a talented young man. This talent was recognized by the Murim, and it was a great honor for him. The old man asks to use the young master's talent for the benefit of the whole world, and will give his personal recommendation to the strategist to become a soldier for Murim. Recalling the beautiful girl Jae-hal-hae in his mind, the young man wonders how he knows her. But one way or another, he needed to answer the old man, as he was expecting an answer. The young master had heard that the soldiers under her command had exceptional abilities. Hearing these words, Chairman Mima noticed that the young man had a unique and strange habit of speaking in a manner that made him seem like he knew everyone. But he doesn't, does he? But if you go back to Jae-hal-hae's army, unfortunately, even if he became her soldier, he would hardly see her. Why is this so? The reason is that she left the alliance. This is quite an interesting situation. The guy didn't expect it. His shocked face reflected complete incomprehension. The little girl ran to her uncle's arms. He called her to him, and was surprised to see that she had already learned to walk. However, before she had walked a meter, she suddenly fell and hit her head, and he shouted her name. He asks her if she's okay, and if she's hurt badly. But as she walks through the corridors, she realizes that walking is too difficult, although she has to learn. The uncle asks if the little girl can kiss him on the cheek. But how can she not kiss her favorite uncle? The moment she kisses him, she bites her uncle instead. Even though he said to kiss him, not bite him. Even if she joins the alliance, he won't be able to see her. After all, this little girl was laughing at the time, but when she grew up, she became a strategist who left the alliance. This sad news made the young gentleman sad. He felt sorry for her. But why did she leave? It was because Hugong's death was the last straw for Seagull. The loss of her godfather was too painful, and it was expected because he was almost a relative to her. The young gentleman realized that Seagull had wanted to make sure he was dead from the very beginning. But she was unable to confirm or verify what had happened and realized that he had simply died. To her surprise, he committed suicide. The young master did not have time to check on her, and this beautiful girl was not in his field of vision. During all this time, he had to find out how his goddaughter was doing and how she was feeling. In any case, Mo Youngmon took over, and the young gentleman was only interested in why he was in the alliance. Chairman Murim's answer was that they wanted him to join the Dark Division. If he agrees, the department that deals with cryptography. Since Murim uses ciphers extensively, there is a department that deals with deciphering them. All the employees of the Dark Department have extraordinary mental abilities, just like the people in the Great Heavenly Library. Chairman Mima begged the boy to accept the position because he would be the best in the department. A genius like him could help the whole world, but the boy refused to accept it outright. When asked why he was refusing, the young gentleman replied simply, He was interested in Jae-hal-hai, and she was not there, so he would not join. But what was his reason? Even though Jae-hal-hai was very beautiful, there are many other beauties in the alliance, and it doesn't really matter. After all, he has so much potential. If he joins their department and proves his abilities, he can eventually become an alliance soldier. The prospect of being promoted to a warrior, not to the head of the alliance, does not interest the heir to the library, but only disgusts him. The old man realizes that the duties of the head are a rather strong statement, but that's what the boy said. If he joins the alliance, he will receive a special gift. A free hugwadam, an elixir so valuable that even the head of Murim cannot afford it more than once every 10 years. This is truly incredible. People should accept it because it is a very rare chance. But looking at the Murim head, maybe he forgot that the guy is from the Great Heavenly Library. He can afford such an elixir every day, and he shouldn't be upset, because his offer is really tempting. As he leaves the head of the Murima Alliance, the boy agrees. Maybe not this time, but next time he will think about joining the alliance, because there is no telling what might happen. The head of the Murim asks him to think about it and returns to his domain. The young master realizes that before he goes to the main fortress of the healers, he has to do something else at home. The next day, a new man, Irim, was appointed as the leader of the guards. He was excellent at his job and had leadership skills, as well as excellent martial arts. Jugan, who was straightforward, obedient, and good-natured, was appointed as his deputy. Because of these qualities, he would become an excellent link between the leader and the soldiers. The heir to the library quickly noticed the talent of these two, and because he chose them, he could now not worry about the safety of the library. The warriors are ready to go to the end for the small heavenly library. They are willing to do anything to protect it. For the great heavenly library, they are ready to give their lives. They will become its impenetrable shield, and all this for the great heavenly library. The warriors swore. Looking at this, the young master wondered how much more they would cut back. Over the next few days, they were to undergo training on how to respond to potential enemies. Even his brothers spent a long time practicing self-defense, learning the basic steps. The young man's attack was quite strong. His palm had great energy. Bumon's nunchaku strikes were an excellent weapon against enemies, and could deliver a devastating blow. To prepare the elixir and speed up their studies, the boys expected nothing less from their brother. He always came up with great solutions. They were very curious about the elixir. Zaha quickly brought the box with the elixirs, and soon it was there. All of these elixirs were in the library, and the boys were amazed that there could even be a dried hexagonal snake. But it was all true, and they were horrified to realize that they would have to eat this disgusting thing. They begged their elder brother to have mercy on them, and not force them to eat this abomination. They would rather drink a barrel of medicinal decoctions than eat this snake. As he left, he ordered them to train until he returned from the main fortress of the healers. This meant that they had to gain strength. Soon the chariot left the great heavenly library. Seonghua and her partner Enso were the accompanying persons. They set off to meet new adventures. Looking at the beautiful weather, the boy was thinking about his future. But soon the sky was overcast, and it seemed like it was going to rain. A bird flying overhead strangely pursued them. At one point, when it saw the young master, it began to descend quickly. Landing, the bird brings something on its leg to one of the people. The person standing in the tree looked like an assassin, and this bird was helping him. They received a message that the heir of the great heavenly library had gone to the main fortress of healers, and in about 2 hours they would be in this forest. This means they are going to unleash their fury on him and complete the task to the end. They quickly distributed themselves to their positions. Last time the young master was lucky, but this time it would be different. The contract is forever, and they will not cancel it. They always go to the end, and this warrior has promised the heir to the library that his time has come to an end. At this moment, the young lord rides in a chariot and asks Seonghua not to sing because her voice is terrible. At the same moment, the soldiers take their positions, but something disturbed them. Some unknown force began to disturb them from different directions. It was unclear what was happening, but his colleagues started shouting from different bushes. Some fireballs were flying past them, taking their lives. The warriors did not understand what was happening, because the force of these blows was incredible. Although this bald bandit tried to run away from the blow, the attacker was much more agile. With his technique and energy, this assailant pierced the head of one of the bandits. Soon after the fierce battle, the energy shock filled the entire forest. The warriors who were supposed to complete the task were killed, which meant that the contract was cancelled. These people had come to protect the heir to the great heavenly library, claiming it as theirs. This indicated that their faces were quite familiar, and they always surrounded the young master. Things were about to get even more interesting. Their wagon was traveling fast through a mountainous area. One of the wagon leaders warned the master that they would soon enter the forest. The road might be rough and bumpy, so he had to be careful. Sowa rode in the chariot with the owner, but his face was gloomy, and she wondered what could have happened to him. Suddenly, the chariot was startled by a sound coming from somewhere unknown. It sounded like laughter, but who would laugh so loudly? The chariot became unmanageable because of this cry, and the driver had to hold the reins tightly. This voice sounded deep in their heads, and no one realized what was happening, as if they were being trapped. Sowa noticed that her body began to shake, and she had to quickly gather her thoughts. The young master took her hand to stop her from shaking. When Sowa saw this, she thought it was a very sweet gesture on his part. He asked her quietly if she was all right and how she was feeling, and she thought she had almost fallen in love. The young master stood up, took his sword, and went to the exit, but it was very dangerous, and Sowa decided to stop him. This did not affect him, and he ordered her to stay here while he checked everything out. Also, Yangso was in a pretty bad condition, and the owner told him to get inside too. The owner was curious who these people were who decided to come out to meet him. He stepped forward and shouted at them to stop pretending to be something they didn't know they were. It turned out that these people were from the Heavenly Squad, and they started jumping from different directions. The people from the Great Heavenly Library were in excellent shape, and could do things that even some strong warriors could not. The warriors landed right in front of the master and called him their commander. They were familiar personalities who would guard the young master all the way. They call themselves the Young Master's Squad, and warn that all enemies will come to an end. Of course, seeing them, it looked like a real performance. No one from the wagon appreciated their antics, as it was too much. The heir to the library could not stop making a face of surprise for a long time. He was wondering what these two fools were doing here, and they had been working on a way out to impress the heir all this time. Once he was in this situation, he realized that they were assigned to guard him, but he needed a more detailed explanation, so he asked the representative to tell him more. The grandfather came out because the conversation was to be with him, and he had to explain everything. But the brothers with long hair stopped him, calling themselves representatives, and addressed the master. However, these people were pushed out by other masters who also wanted to explain everything better. The girl didn't understand why they were going to explain anything at all, because she considered herself the main one in this team and wanted to be a representative. But a fierce argument started, and no one could explain anything properly. The young owner was watching all this carefully and saw their disorganization. The guy ran to the center and shouted that they should stop doing nonsense. Watching him, the heir apparent noticed that this guy decided to take control of the situation instead of arguing. However, his decision was rather stupid. He suggested that we throw lots instead of continuing the argument. Of course, this was expected. But the young master approached the smallest among them, Sochon, and asked him to explain what was going on. Sochon even thought that the heir apparent knew he was smart, and he was going to tell him what happened. The fact was that Wu Qiang was the reason for hiring the squads of these people, because the ruthless killers, once they made a deal with him, would never renegotiate it again. The master of the rumor had promised to beat all the members of the ruthless killers. He found the strongest warriors to destroy the killers, and he also created a squad to protect him. But what kind of a unit is this, where everyone quarrels and argues over such trivial matters? Could it not be true? He was surprised. The young man asked them to stop quarreling because the information had already been reported to the master. The master ran up to him, realizing in horror that the boy had forgotten the curse of the Heavenly Squad. They never act independently. It was clear that this squad had a dubious future right after their first meeting. The owner offered to introduce himself, as he was seeing most of the squad for the first time. The first was an old man who laughed because these kids thought he was a loser because of his age. But as long as he was with them, they were definitely not in danger. The next were 3 warriors of the Gorge. They are happy to fulfill this mission and will not allow disorder and thoughtlessness where they stand. No robber will pass through them, and they will be able to protect everyone. Then there were the twins. In the Heavenly Corral, they can be relied upon more than anyone else. Everyone will feel safe with them. A girl named Mi Bingbing had heard a lot about the master. She was a fan and was excited to be able to protect him. But why did she think she was so lucky? The young master asked her who her father was. She replied that he was from the White House. Despite their resemblance, they were nothing alike. The next freedom fighters needed no introduction, for the young master knew them well. He looked at them with a fierce gaze so that they would not stand out. But there was no time to hesitate. They had to move on, no matter what. Still, someone stopped her, saying that she had to wait. The beggar asked the old man if he was going to play his pipe, but this question was probably not accidental. The old man was going to check something and was walking forward. He waved his hands and said that everything was in place, because this was their first meeting with the owner since the founding of the unit. He planned to test the young master's skills so that they would better understand what to do in normal situations. His colleagues supported the old man's words and completely agreed with him. But the master of hearing was horrified to realize that these people were not listening to what he was telling them. He had seen for himself what a great warrior he was, and the young man had seen with his own eyes and did not need to be verified. Looking at them, it was just unbelievable that they behaved like this out of boredom. Well, they would be fun, of course. The squad, of course, believed in the master of the senses, but they wanted to check it out with their own eyes. If he was as strong as they'd heard, it wouldn't cost him anything to convince them in battle. There was only one question left. Do they really want to test it, despite the consequences? The young master looked on, realizing that the fun was about to begin. Despite the foolishness of these fools, he decided to show them his techniques. He did not agree to the offer to arrange a fight right now. He explained that it would soon start raining and they needed to hide somewhere dry. No one understood what kind of rain he was talking about, because the sky was clear. Soon the clouds covered the blue sky, but it was still not clear that it would rain. And the boys continued to look, not understanding where the rain was. But in the middle of a clear day, it started raining heavily, even with lightning. It was just amazing how he could predict it, and the rain started right after he said it. This is true power. As Chun followed the old man, he even thought he could control the weather, watching his tricks. During the rain, the old man continued to play his pipe, and it didn't bother him. The melody was quite sad and depressing, and the twins could hardly stand it, wishing for something more cheerful. The brothers from the gorge were freezing, and would be happy if some enemies attacked them right now, so that they could at least get warm. They began to shout that the heir to the great library was traveling along the road, and this was a great opportunity for the assassin to kill him, because he was inside the wagon, and they needed to get him. Looking at this circus, the guy was already thinking about killing them all himself. If this continues, they will probably push him to the limit. At that moment, the girls were eating candy that was meant for the owner. They were also from the big library. This whole ensemble was following the young master, and he did not even know what to do with this whole delegation. At the moment when they reached their destination, the young master was not alone. They were welcomed as friends with open arms. Soon, when they entered the large building, they were seated on comfortable chairs. The young host just decided to wish a pleasant appetite to his friends and hosts who had initiated him. The fact is that they were sitting at one of the biggest tables in the restaurant, and the old man didn't like it. The guy turned to him, asking why he stopped everyone, forbidding them to eat. Maybe he wanted to say a prayer before eating. But that was not the point. Perhaps everyone sitting here may forget why they came here in the first place. In battle, any method can be used, and because of this, they don't know whether to trust them. Still, one couldn't help but agree with him. Maybe he was right. They could not even think about it. But the young lady decided to say that they shouldn't worry about what he said, because it might just be the self-hypnosis of a narcissistic old man. She had silver chopsticks that would show if the food was poisoned as soon as she touched it. She took a piece of this beautifully smelling food to test it. She put it in her mouth, and it seemed like nothing was wrong. Looking at her, the young master realized that it was not the chopsticks. She had simply tested the food by eating it. Everyone was watching the girl's reaction, but nothing happened. And the taste and smell of the food attracted everyone. No one paid attention to whether there was poison or not. They began to quickly grab pieces of this food with their chopsticks. When they all checked to see if there was any poison in the plate, there was no more food left, and the owner had nothing to worry about because he hadn't gotten any. The heir to the library realized that he was invulnerable to poison, so even if there was, he would not be affected. After that, the young master, looking at the people around him, realized that all this excitement was in vain, and they had forgotten about those around them. It was not surprising that there could be at least one murderer among them. Although the girl assured him that there was no poison in the food and he shouldn't worry, he still didn't care. It was not about the food. At that moment, some people approached them. He said that if they were making so much noise, the food must be very tasty. The guy looked at them, realizing that they were most likely guests of the restaurant. He did not think they were murderers. The young men asked everyone to observe the rules of decency, as there were many people with them. The old man sitting at the table was outraged by the way these people approached and spoke disrespectfully to him when they first met. He got up from his chair and started knocking over all the food on the table because he was disrespected without knowing how old he was. The heir to the library again watched his food being knocked over by these rascals. He was irritated by the rudeness of these people. It was unacceptable to him, and if they didn't respect him, they shouldn't talk to him so disrespectfully, as that was the main rule. The twins, realizing that these people had no manners, decided to talk to them with their fists, because together with their brother they could quickly resolve the situation. But the old man kept shouting about his age, emphasizing that he was over 60 years old. They didn't even ask him how old he was and started to be rude, but these people didn't even know that they should ask. One of them decided to joke that it was the first time in the 10 years of their gang's existence that they had heard of such a rule. If you think about it, there are no such laws in the Murim world, and everyone wanted to stop Master Kim because he was shouting. It didn't matter what age he was, but he was so strong that he could hardly restrain himself from attacking them. But then these people heard that it was Master Kim whom they knew. They could not believe that such a polite Master Kim could become such a tough guy who would not let them say a word at all. Master Kim took out a golden flute from his pocket. There was no doubt that it was indeed Master Kim Jok. In this case, these people realized that they could not defeat these people. But why did this happen now? His strength could only be compared to an elder of the demonic faction. The problem wasn't even his flute 3 people couldn't hold off a master, and it wouldn't be easy to defeat them. Looking around with these inadequate twins, they couldn't imagine what they would do to them. The 2 beggars were also in the room. They were the best of the bunch, but they were quite violent. The young master, the head of their group, looked like a real martial arts master, and the leader of this gang decided that it was better not to mess with them. The guy watching this mess is already tired of all this nonsense around him. He takes his team and says that they need to go back. Was it really worth it for his friends to make such a scandal? They had already made a mess, so they should just leave. The old man couldn't get over the fact that the problem hadn't been solved yet, and they couldn't just leave. The people who had picked on them were going to just run away from this place without even being responsible for this mess. Although the gang leader was stopping them, the words had already been spoken. Then the young master looked at them with a very cold look. This look made the gang whimper and become embarrassed. As soon as he looked at their bearded leader, something in his soul turned over. The moment they looked at the master, his body seemed to start breaking into different parts. He held his head, felt cold, and his face turned pale. His people began to ask what happened to him. The master began to behave uncharacteristically, but the young master did not even come over to make any kind of a punch. He just walked away from the place, ignoring the shouts. The young master was going to leave without a fight, but he still needed to stop picking up food from the floor, even though people were throwing away such beautiful food. The gang thought they had achieved what they wanted. When they felt his gaze, they realized that the young master could have easily killed them. They were glad that they were lucky, because if it had come to a fight, they would not have survived. The bald member of the gang asked the commander if they would not pursue these guys. But their leader was struck by the eyes of this young man when he looked at him. It seemed to him that he was being cut from the inside. His body was being torn into small pieces. It was hard for the commander to imagine whether he would have survived if the young master had drawn his sword. After a while, the sounds of the night Murim were filled with the melody of the old man's pipe. Sitting on the roof, a young man from the poor man's sect asked the old man why these men did not attack them. The old man replied that the warriors lacked honor, and it seemed that their master did not want to get into a fight. Although it would not have been difficult to defeat them, despite all this, at that moment Sohwa approached them. Sohwa asked these men to come to the young master's room. Although they were going to sleep, they needed to go to him. When they entered his room, they saw that Bomhan had prepared a test for them. Looking at what he had done, they wondered why they had called him. Their arms and legs refused to move, but the young master asked them to sit down and go through the test. They had never heard him speak to them like that, and it was just amazing. When they saw so many goodies on the owner's table, they were amazed, and he let them eat it all. But they still did not understand why he called them. Perhaps he wanted to tell them something. Recently, the head of the Murim came to the library and said something strange. He said that 1,000 guards had allegedly started attacking people, and that the Alliance itself could not cope with them. He was curious to know if this was true, and even more curious about what the two would say. They had a delicious dinner, and now it was clear to them why they had actually been called. It was no surprise that the Alliance was failing after all. They had allowed the crimes of the Samoon clan to happen, and it had certainly made a splash. But why did 1,000 guards choose such a dark path, causing so many problems, and they couldn't be stopped? It made the Murima Alliance seem like not such a cool place, because there was so much disorder. 1,000 guards were taken in 15 years ago, and they weren't like this then. Their future looked bright, and the young master didn't think he would hear such news. As they were having a delicious dinner, someone was watching them from a tree. This ninja not only overheard their conversation, but also quickly moved to another place. He moved to the elder and greeted him. There were two of them. They brought the elder sleeping pills, and everything was ready to be handed over. The old man turned to them. The warriors in the heavenly squad of 9 martial artists must successfully complete the task, because if they resume it for nothing, it will become an even greater threat. The fastest way to get rid of the heir apparent's squad is to kill the heir to the great library. The old man gives them a task, to do it in 7 days. They must kill everyone in the library, including the heirs. The soldiers realized that their lives depended only on themselves. They accepted this order. The wind whirled in the air, and the old man disappeared from sight.